Chapter 562. In competitive Peak City, the Alliance Venerables and Advisor June were sitting on both sides of the hall. They were discussing how to fight against Heaven's Sanctum. In the first battle of Heaven's Sanctum, Zhongzhou had lost 3 Venerables. Including the injured Supreme Bodhi and the half-crippled Palace Lord Taibai, the 5 regions' Venerables had suffered a great loss. The 8 Venerables under them all had solemn expressions. Apart from the 8 of them, Venerables Mu Hua, Qi Wei, and Bailey each led an army to stop Heaven's Sanctum from expanding. Venerables Hong Lu had to deal with the refugees and wouldn't be able to return in a short period of time. The only good news was that 3 more Venerables from Nanling, Beiyuan, and Shitu had come to support Zhongzhou. Ning Chen quietly listened to the Venerables' discussion. He didn't say a word from start to finish. Venerables Li, why haven't the reinforcements arrived yet? Zhao Liusu asked from the main seat. Since the start of the war, Zhongzhou's sects have suffered great losses. It won't be easy to get more reinforcements, Venerables Li replied. What about the other 3 regions? When will their reinforcements arrive? Zhao Liusu looked at Venerables Qing Yu and asked. At least a month, Venerables Qing Yu replied. Bang! Hearing this, Zhao Liusu slapped the armrest and sat up. She said coldly, a month? How long has it been delayed? Report. At this moment, a guard ran in from outside the hall and knelt down. Heaven's Sanctum has sent a letter to Advisor June, send it in, Zhao Liusu said. Yes. The guard entered the hall and handed over the letter. Ning Chen took the letter and glanced at it. His lips curled up. As expected, they still came. Advisor, what's the matter? Zhao Liusu asked. Ning Chen handed the letter to her and said calmly, someone wants to see you. Zhao Liusu frowned. After reading the letter, she reminded, Advisor June, be careful. Just catching up. Alliance Venerables, don't worry, Ning Chen smiled and replied. Let Venerables Li and Hong Lu accompany Advisor June, Zhao Liusu said, still worried. There's no need. Ning Chen stood up and shook his head. Everyone, please continue your discussion. I'll take my leave first. After he finished speaking, Ning Chen didn't stay any longer and strode out of the hall. After the military advisor left, the 8 human supremes looked at each other. Venerable Xianzhen hesitated for a moment and said, Alliance Venerable, does this Marquis Jiming really want to help the Central Region fight against Heaven's Mansion? These days, he didn't give any suggestions, nor did he express any opinions about our decisions. It's obvious that he still can't let go of the old grudges. Let go. Zhao Liusu's tone turned cold. She looked at the person in front of her and said, Xianzhen Zun, I don't know if Jiming Marquis has let go of the past grudges, but the wise man gives his plans, and the martial artist shows his strength. The division of labor is clear. If the order can't be stopped, no matter how good the plan is, it's useless. Hearing this, Xianzhen Reverend's body froze. He couldn't argue anymore and fell silent. In Wenxian Palace, Ning Chen walked back. When he didn't see Yin, he walked out again. In the city, on the bustling streets, a 12 or 13-year-old girl was strolling by herself. She was already holding a large pile of things in her arms, but she still looked around with interest. Ning Chen appeared and followed far behind. He knew that the phoenix body had once used phoenix blood to cleanse Yin-er's foundation. In addition, the little girl's talent was not bad. At such a young age, she was already a 5th stage natal stage expert. He more or less guessed Qing Ning's purpose. He lacked some humanity. Ordinary people might not be able to see it, but he couldn't guarantee that the human sovereign stage experts wouldn't be suspicious. Morning, afternoon, and then dusk. The facts once again proved how terrifying a woman could be when shopping, even if she was only a 12 or 13-year-old girl. As the sun set, there were fewer stalls on the streets. Only then did Yin reluctantly carry her pile of things back along the road she came from. Yin When the little girl approached, Ning Chen called out. Turned her head from behind the small mountain of things in her arms. Seeing the person in front of her, she asked, "Why are you looking for me?" "I'm going to see a friend." "Come with me," Ning Chen said. "No." Shook her little head vigorously and refused. Ning Chen narrowed his eyes. This little girl was not as easy to fool as she was when she was 7 or 8 years old. "Stay here by yourself. No one will take care of you." Ning Chen continued to persuade her. "Sister Qing Ning is here." Continued to shake her head. "Your sister Qing Ning went to pick up her senior sister. She's not in the city," Ning Chen said. "I have money. I can take care of myself." Looked at her little pouch and refused to give in. "Then I'm leaving. You can stay here by yourself. If anyone bullies you, don't regret it. Don't forget that although some people in the city are very polite to me on the surface, they actually hate me. If I'm not here, sigh." After speaking, Ning Chen shook his head and turned to leave the city. When heard this, she immediately jogged 2 steps to catch up. Her eyes curved as she said, "I'm going too." "Don't force yourself," Ning Chen said reasonably. "I won't." Smiled. Thus, the two of them left competitive Peak City and headed towards the southeast. 2 days later, in the east of Central Plains, 2 cups of tea were served in front of the battle between the 2 armies. Xiao Bieli waited patiently for Ji Ming to appear. Just as the appointed time was about to arrive, a red-robed figure appeared in the distance. He walked over step by step. When the allied army saw him, they immediately parted to welcome him. "As expected, you came." Xiao Bieli stood up and calmly looked at him. "It would be impolite to refuse an invitation from the heavens." Ning Chen smiled. "Please sit." Xiao Bieli extended his hand. "Many thanks." Ning Chen didn't stand on ceremony and sat down. "Now, should I call you Sir Bai or Ji Ming Marquis?" asked Xiao Bieli. "It's just a name. Do as you wish." "Ha!" Xiao Bieli smiled. "I never thought that after parting in the heavenly sanctum, we would meet again in such a situation. The affairs of the world are unpredictable. Who can predict what will happen in advance? I heard from Reverend Jin Yang that you like to drink tea. This cup of tea was specially prepared for you. Please try it." Xiao Bieli pushed one of the cups over. Ning Chen took a sip and calmly said, "The quality of the tea isn't bad. Unfortunately, the heavens didn't specially invite me to drink it. This tea is tasteless." Xiao Bieli smiled. "The Grand Xia's Ji Ming Marquis not only has a killing sword, but also a mouth sharper than a sword. I'm fully worthy of such praise." Ning Chen put down his cup without the slightest modesty. "Knowledge Marquis, practically everyone in the world knows that you were forced into the ocean of Devil Wheel. I'm very curious. With the enmity between you and the various sects of the Central Prefecture, why did you choose to help them?" asked Xiao Libi. "The Pill Tower and the Heavenly Sanctum's sacred lands also have enmity with each other. But aren't they following the heavens to conquer the 5 regions? I presume you know the reason even without me saying it," said Ning Chen. "It's different." Xiao Bieli shook his head. "We're doing it for survival, while you're repaying evil with good. Ji Ming Marquis, if you promise not to interfere in the war between the 2 realms, I can also promise you that I won't let the flames of war spread to the eastern divine plains." "Oh." Ning Chen narrowed his eyes. "That promise from the heavens is truly a great temptation. It's just a win-win deal. Ji Ming Marquis, there's no need for you to take such risks for people who have nothing to do with you or even have enmity with you. You shouldn't care who's in charge of the world, right?" said Xiao Bieli. "Ning Chen, you can't be tricked by this scoundrel." Hastily reminded him when she saw that a certain person was about to switch sides. "Don't be rude. Also, call me Big Brother Ning, said Ning Chen softly. Who is this? Asked Xiao Bieli curiously. The descendant of a senior. I've come out to broaden my horizons. It's fine as long as she doesn't exist, said Ning Chen. Your talent isn't bad. Xiao Bieli waved his hand, took out a sheepskin scroll, and handed it over. This is a secret art of the Tian Xiang dynasty, the heavenly sword transformation. Since it's our first meeting, consider it a greeting gift from me to this junior. Ning Chen smiled and said, why aren't you thanking Senior Tianxiang for bestowing martial arts upon you? Took a step forward and received the scroll. She obediently bowed. Many thanks, Senior Tian Xiang. Xiao Bieli nodded and then looked back at the young man. Jiming Marquis, what do you think of my suggestion? Compared to the Central Plains sects, the Heavenly Sanctum doesn't have much enmity with you. It shouldn't be difficult to choose who you can trust more. I will seriously consider your suggestion. However, there's something I've been unable to figure out. I hope you can explain it to me, said Ning Chen. Please speak, said Xiao Bieli. I once stayed on the Heavenly Sanctum planet for a period of time, so I have some understanding of the Heavenly Sanctum. With the Heavenly Sanctum's resources, it's more than enough to satisfy the various sections. Why must you pay such a huge price to invade the 5 regions? Asked Ning Chen seriously. Xiao Bieli fell silent. A moment later, he sighed. This matter involves the Heavenly Sanctum's secrets. Forgive me for not being able to tell you. All I can say is that this war is extremely important to the Heavenly Sanctum. We can't back down. Ning Chen's eyes lit up. If the 2 realms stop fighting, what are the Heavenly Sanctum's conditions? The inner realm will completely give up the central region, replied Xiao Bieli. There's no room for discussion? Asked Ning Chen. There's no room for discussion, said Xiao Bieli calmly. I'll tell the Alliance sovereigns about this condition when I return. However, the Central Plains sect's foundations are here. It'll be difficult to make them give up. Ning Chen shook his head regretfully. If they don't give up, then I'll beat them until they give up. Jiming Marquis, you're a smart person, the smartest person in the world. I hope your decision won't disappoint me. A red figure appeared behind Xiao Bieli. It was a familiar face, and a powerful aura. It was no weaker than a human sovereign. A moment later, the red figure faded and vanished. Ning Chen narrowed his eyes, but they returned to normal in the blink of an eye. He slowly said, as expected, you're not immortal. I never thought that the Vermilion Bird Divine Treasury would be found by you in the end. It was just a pleasant surprise. Jiming Marquis, the reason I revealed so many secrets to you was because I didn't want to see 2 identical Jiming Marquises one day replace the other, said Xiao Bieli indifferently. Don't worry, Jiming. That day won't come. The corners of Ning Chen's mouth curled up as he smiled. Chapter 563. At the front of the 2 armies, Destiny Knowing and Heaven Minister finished their discussion. The armies retreated, and neither of them took the opportunity to attack. The 2 of them had a tacit understanding. Once the armies left, they both turned and left. The 2 of them stood with their backs facing each other, each with their own thoughts. The confrontation between the 5 regions and the Heavenly Sanctum had begun over a cup of tea. Heaven Minister, why didn't you kill him? Asked Fan Xinghong. She had been waiting for a long time. I'm not confident. Furthermore, I cherish talent. I don't want to become enemies with him, said Xiao Bieli softly. Will he really agree to Heaven Minister's conditions and not interfere in the war between the 2 realms? Asked Fan Xinghong. I don't know. Perhaps he won't, replied Xiao Bieli. Hearing this, Fan Xinghong frowned and said, since even the celestial phenomenon is not confident, why don't you let me kill him and get rid of future troubles? There's no need. Xiao Bieli shook his head. You can't kill him. At least, you can't right now. Wait. If he doesn't let go in 3 days, I'll give you a chance to kill him. On the other side, red clothes fluttered in the wind as the two of them traveled north together. Big brother Ning, are you really going to agree to that bastard's conditions? Pouted unhappily. Why not? Asked Ning Chen. You're someone from the 5 regions. How can you compromise with the outer realms? Asked Do you think I care about such things? Smiled Ning Chen. You can't agree to it. Otherwise, once the Central Plains falls, I'll have no home to return to. Tried to persuade him once more. The eastern region is vast enough to accommodate a new sword-forging mountain manor. Ning Chen smiled. I don't want to go to the eastern region. Big brother Ning, don't give up on the Central Plains, said It's not up to me to decide whether to give up or not. I promised your grandpa the sword master that I would give the Central Plains sex a chance. However, if they don't want this chance, I won't force them, said Ning Chen calmly. In the Jingfeng city in the north of Zhongzhou state, in the main hall where all the venerables were having a discussion, a secret report had recorded the details of the meeting between Knowing Destiny and Tianxiang. When Zhao Liusu saw it, she frowned slightly. Alliance Senior, what happened? Below the seats, 2 new faces sat quietly. One of them opened his mouth and asked. Zhao Liusu came back to her senses and smiled faintly, it's nothing. The spies have reported that the negotiations between the military advisor and the celestial minister have ended. They should be back soon. Great Xia's Jiming Marquis, I've been looking forward to it for a long time, said Zun Wenyang of Nanling. South of competitive Peak City, 400 miles away, a red coat was heading north. At the same time, a green coat was heading east. As they passed each other, Ning Chen stopped in his tracks. It was at this point that Green Robe turned, smiled, and mercilessly unleashed a palm strike. Ning Chen grabbed His figure was like an illusion as he quickly retreated dozens of feet. However, the green-clothed woman was unwilling to let him go. Her delicate hand was like the sickle of the Grim Reaper, threatening to take his life. Ning Chen took a strange step, and the water light flickered. He avoided the woman's palm power, unwilling to take it head-on. Great Xia Jiming Marquis, where is your sword? The green-clothed woman smiled. She took a step forward and pointed. The sand around her gathered into a sword that tore through the air. Ning Chen frowned slightly. He flipped his palm and sent out of the battle. Then, he waved his hand, and the clear sunly fire appeared. The white fan moved the wind and clouds, blocking the sand swords. Why aren't you fighting back? Are you unwilling or unable? Seeing that the opponent was only dodging and not attacking, the green-clothed woman's attacks became even fiercer. Shi Piaoxiu, this is the first time we meet, yet you want to use martial arts to force me. This greeting gift is really hard to accept, Ning Chen's figure flashed, and he once again avoided the former's palm power. Jiming Marquis is indeed smart, but just being smart isn't enough to keep you alive. With her identity exposed, Shi Piaoxiu's attacks did not stop at all. She flipped her palm, and the dust in the surroundings surged like a tide, sweeping thousands of feet. Her shocking power and killing intent were not hidden at all. A cold light flashed through Ning Chen's eyes. He stepped forward, and his white fan became a sword. Sword chi gathered in the surroundings, and he once again formed a peak sword. At this moment, a silver spear tore through the air and crashed toward the woman in the battle. When Shi Piaoxiu saw this, she changed the direction of her palm and knocked away the silver spear. Junior apprentice sister, you actually attacked your senior apprentice sister for an outsider. How naughty, smiled Shi Piaoxiu. As soon as she finished speaking, Bai Lingling appeared. Looking at the battle, her gentle expression hardened, and she softly reprimanded, Piaoxiu, don't cause trouble. Qing Ning walked in front of the silver spear and put it away. She looked back and said coldly, third senior apprentice sister, I don't care if you did it intentionally or not. In this world, anyone who dares to harm him will be my enemy. It's the same for everyone. Ning Chen's figure descended from the sky. Looking at the two chosen who had also come from the western Jade Mountain, his eyes constantly flashed. A sect with two sovereigns, plus Bai Lingling who wasn't a chosen but was even stronger than a chosen. The western Jade Mountain's foundation was truly shocking. When he had time, he wanted to see just what kind of person this western Jade Mountain master was. She was actually able to raise so many monstrous disciples. Is the fight over? Seeing that there was no movement, Yin-Er ran over and asked. It's over. Let's go back. Ning Chen smiled as he spoke. Soon after, he strode forward. Qing Ning followed by Bai Lingling and Shi Piaoxiu. They all had different expressions and thoughts. Piaoxiu, you should know that the Jiming Marquis is junior apprentice sister's reverse scale. Don't make such a joke in the future, said Bai Lingling seriously. Who says I'm joking? This time, junior apprentice sister just happened to stop me, smiled Shi Piaoxiu. Hearing this, Bai Lingling frowned. Why? With junior apprentice sister's talent, if she doesn't sever her ties with the mortal world, she won't be able to enter the chosen realm in this lifetime. Apart from completing master's task, my main goal was to kill this Jiming Marquis, said Shi Piaoxiu indifferently. If you do this, Qing Ning will hate you for the rest of her life, said Bai Lingling. Hate, love, hatred. Human emotions will fade with time. Being a chosen has been a chosen for 800 years. Junior apprentice sister has plenty of time to forget these things. Moreover, Shi Piaoxiu suddenly changed the topic. She looked at the red-clothed figure and smiled. In the short exchange just now, I discovered that this Jiming Marquis seemed to be doing his best to avoid using his cultivation. There must be a reason for this. I think that the Jiming Marquis' current body can't easily use martial arts. Bai Lingling was silent. After a moment, she sighed. Piaoxiu, don't be rash. Not to mention the Jiming Marquis' position in junior apprentice sister's heart, this is a critical moment in the battle between the two realms. If the 5 regions lose a military advisor who can contend against the heavenly minister, the situation will immediately become unfavorable for the inner realm. It's not the inner realm, but the central region. Although heaven's sanctum is strong, without a chosen above chosen, it's more than enough to conquer the central region. It'll be difficult to conquer the entire 5 regions, said Shi Piaoxiu. As the two talked, the group returned to competitive Peak City. Ning Chen entered the meeting hall. Everyone stood up and respectfully welcomed him. Military advisor, how did the meeting go? Asked Zhao Liusu. Ning Chen walked to his seat and sat down. He looked at the 8 supremes and the 2 unfamiliar supremes and smiled. These 2 should be supremes Wenyang and Xinling, right? Wenyang. Xinling. Greetings, military advisor. The 2 of them took half a step forward and politely bowed. No need for formalities. Please sit, said Ning Chen. Thank you, military advisor. The 2 of them bowed once more before returning to their seats. The heavenly minister's condition for stopping the war is for the 5 regions to completely give up the central region. You can all think about it, said Ning Chen. Impossible. Supremacy Li suddenly sat up and directly rejected it. His sudden figure seemed very lonely in the hall. Xianzhen, Yusheng, Qingyu, and the other supremes from the other 3 regions chose to remain silent. A strange atmosphere rose in the hall, making it indescribably oppressive. Seeing that they didn't say anything, Supremacy Li's expression sank. Fellow Supremes, you should all understand that if the central region is lost so easily, the heavenly sanctum's ambition will grow infinitely. None of you want to see the flames of war spread to your own regions, right? Supremacy Li is right. Those who aren't of our race are bound to have different intentions. The heavenly sanctum paid such a huge price to break open the Netherworld King's barrier, so how could they give up so easily? This condition is just to divide the 5 regions. Zhao Liusu said solemnly. The Supremes fell silent. For a moment, no one spoke. Right, there's one more thing. Perhaps it can only be considered a private matter. The heavenly minister promised that as long as Grand Destiny withdrew from the war between the two realms, he would guarantee that the eastern region wouldn't be affected by the flames of war. Such a tempting condition, I can't even think of an excuse to refuse, said Ning Chen. When Zhao Liusu and the other supremes heard this, their expressions changed. What a heavenly minister! This was a plot to sow discord. He didn't even try to hide it. Military advisor, with your intelligence, there's no way you can't see that this is just a plot by the heavenly minister to sow discord. Don't fall for it, said Supremacy Li uneasily. Sow discord? Ning Chen smiled. I know, but aren't you all tempted as well? Perhaps the heavenly sanctum will be satisfied if they take over the central plains. Of course, even if they aren't satisfied, there's still the northern plains, western earth, and Nanling. The heavenly sanctum's current strength isn't enough to take over the 5 regions. With this promise, the eastern region will definitely be the safest region. The central plains won't be lost. We'll do our best to help the central plains stop the heavenly sanctum. Please don't give up on this world, said Supremacy Xian Ling and Supremacy Wen Yang. In the next moment, Supremes Xian Zhen, Yusheng, and Qing Yu also stood up and respectfully asked for orders. The 10 supremes all bowed. The hall was abnormally quiet. Zhao Liusu also stood up and bowed silently. Outside the hall, Shi Piaoshu walked in and smiled. The Grand Xia's Grand Destiny Marquis truly lived up to his name. The heavenly minister's plan to sow discord seemed to have backfired. This battle of the wise was truly marvelous to the extreme. Piaoshu, the knowing Destiny Marquis can't die, said Bai Lingling seriously. The heavenly minister was too powerful. With just a few words, he had caused the already unstable alliance of the 5 regions to almost completely collapse. One had to admit that in this world, in addition to absolute strength, absolute wisdom also had an important position. Outside the Golden Buddha Temple, a beautiful figure dressed in blue and white stood quietly. It was the demon Venerable Bai Yunlian. He had been waiting for many days to avenge Yao Qilua. At this moment, Red Shirt appeared with the sleeping girl on his back. He stepped onto the stone steps in front of the temple and walked into the temple. As they passed each other, Ning Chen stopped and looked at the woman beside him. Still waiting? He asked calmly. Yes. Bai Yunlian nodded. The current you can't kill him. Ning Chen spoke the truth. Supreme Bodhi was already at the peak of the human sovereign realm. Even though his cultivation had declined after he demonized and the Buddha and demon clashed, he was still not someone that ordinary sovereigns could compare to. Bai Yunlian was silent. After a moment, he asked, "Can you help me?" Ning Chen shook his head. The current me can't help you. I'll give you another piece of advice. Revenge isn't urgent. Even if he was injured by the sword sovereign, as long as he's still in the Golden Buddha Temple, no one can kill him. The demon subduing pagoda was extremely helpful to Supreme Bodhi's cultivation. Unless the demon subduing pagoda was destroyed, the Golden Buddha Temple would be a forbidden land for demons and demons. Then why have you come here? Bai Yunlian was confused. You said before that you worked together with a demon to deal with Supreme Bodhi. I want to know where that person is. Back then, Xia Zi had been heavily injured and had been rescued by 2 women. White Flood Dragon had just entered the human realm, so he wasn't familiar with the experts of the human realm. However, Supreme Bodhi definitely knew. Xia Zi had walked the path of demonization much longer than him. Perhaps he could get some inspiration from him. That person was struck by Supreme Bodhi's palm. He might not survive, said Bai Yunlian softly. Whether he's dead or alive, we'll only know after we see him. I'll go in first, said Ning Chen. If it's not convenient, Yin'er can stay here with me for now. Bai Yunlian glanced at the little girl on Ning Chen's back. No need. Ning Chen shook his head as he spoke, and then he flipped his palm and blasted open the door to the temple before striding in. Ning Chen walked over to the demon-subduing pagoda. Looking at the golden pagoda, he narrowed his eyes. When he saw this pagoda, he thought of the phoenix body's indestructible turtle shell. If he wanted to destroy this pagoda, it wouldn't be easy. Ba. Benefactor, it's already too late today. Please come back tomorrow. A little monk continuously went up to stop him. Ning Chen waved his hand and a jade talisman appeared in his hand. He handed it to the little monk and calmly said, "Send this talisman into the pagoda." The little monk was puzzled. But when he sensed the powerful pressure coming from the talisman, he understood that he couldn't handle this matter. He took the jade talisman and quickly walked into the pagoda. Within the demon-subduing pagoda, Subhuti was still suppressing his injuries when he sensed someone enter. He opened his eyes and looked at the little monk. He calmly asked, "What is it?" Reporting to the venerable, someone outside sent a disciple to deliver this talisman. The little monk respectfully handed over the jade talisman. Subhuti's eyes lit up. This was the Alliance's commander's seal. "What does the person who sent you look like?" asked Subhuti. "It's a red-robed youth. He's carrying a sleeping girl on his back. Other than that, there's nothing special about him," replied the little monk. "A red-robed youth." Subhuti softly muttered. He now had a better understanding of this person's identity. There could only be one red-robed youth who possessed this talisman, the Grand Xia's wisdom Marquis. Thinking of this, Subhuti stood up and walked outside. Ning Chen calmly waited outside the demon-subduing pagoda. When he saw the Buddha walk out, he smiled. "Subhuti, long time no see. How have you been? Wisdom Marquis, are you here for revenge?" Subhuti waved his hand and returned the jade talisman. "Wrong. I'm here as the military advisor of the 5 Territory Alliance. I want to ask you something," replied Ning Chen as he received the jade talisman. Subhuti's expression didn't change. He calmly asked, "What is it?" "Xia Zi's whereabouts and the identity of the person who saved him." "Don't tell me you don't know?" asked Ning Chen indifferently. Subhuti was silent for a moment. After a while, he said, "At that time, there were 2 people who appeared. I don't know who one of them was. As for the other person, she was far away from the battle and didn't directly attack. However, from her aura, I can vaguely guess that she's very likely Luotian Mi Fei." "Oh, it's her." Ning Chen was startled. It was that mysterious woman again. What's the background of this person? Ning Chen recovered from his shock and spoke with a serious expression. "Luoshui God," replied Subhuti truthfully. Ning Chen's eyes narrowed. God. These 2 words weren't commonly used in the human world. Like the 4 symbols gods, they were strange existences that coexisted with heaven and earth. Of course, without any embellishments, only the 2 words God referred to the existence that surpassed everything, the King of Hell, the 7 extremes. Who would have thought that Luotian Mi wasn't human? No wonder this woman was able to understand the law of words even though she was only in the half-reverend realm. Chapter 565. Outside the Golden Buddha Temple, Ning Chen walked out after receiving his answer. He glanced at the woman in front of the temple and said, "Miss Bai, we'll meet again someday." Bai Yunlian nodded silently. Ning Chen didn't say anything else and headed south. After a few breaths, he disappeared into the night. On the banks of the Luo River, a beautiful woman was playing the zither. Her aura was as calm as water, without the slightest sharpness of a martial artist. At this moment, there was the sound of footsteps. The wind whistled and a red figure slowly walked over. When she looked back, she was already 300 meters away. The secret realm's restrictions automatically activated, blocking the person's path. However, the flowing clouds turned into a sword and cut open a path to welcome the arrival of the knowing destiny cultivator. Ding! The sound of the zither echoed across the river. A waterfall of water turned into a sword and flew out, blocking the intruder. Ning Chen's expression didn't change. Wind and clouds gathered around him, turning into a stream of swords that blocked the water sword. Luotian's hands moved and the scattered water sword changed again, condensing into one and slashing towards the intruder. In terms of martial arts, you're unfathomable. In terms of the sword, you're still a bit inferior. Ning Chen said calmly. Then, he condensed his yuan qi with his fingers and slashed out with his sword, shattering the water sword that was approaching him with a clang. Knowing destiny, Marquis, I apologize for trespassing on the Luo River. Luotian pressed her hands down, stopping the zither music. We're mortal enemies. What's there to be polite about? Ning Chen calmly said. So the knowing destiny Marquis is here to take revenge? Unfortunately, you're alone. It'll be difficult, said Luotian indifferently. Is that so? Ning Chen's eyes turned cold, and a demonic aura filled his eyes as he spoke. Noisy. Just as the atmosphere became tense, an unhappy murmur sounded. Who was sleeping soundly on Ning Chen's back, was disturbed by the confrontation between the two. She closed her eyes and reached out to push Ning Chen away before continuing to sleep. In an instant, Ning Chen regained his composure and suppressed his demonic instincts. A smile reappeared on his face and he said, Miss Mi Fei, you've misunderstood. There's no need to mention past grudges. I didn't come here for revenge, but to inquire about a person. Oh. Who is it? Asked Luotian. Xia Zi, the demon that Miss once saved, said Ning Chen. When Luotian heard this, she waved her hand and sent a letter over. She said, Xia Zi has been taken away by Luofei. This is the letter she left for you. Ning Chen took the letter, opened it, and glanced at it. His eyes narrowed slightly. It turned out that Luofei had already guessed that he wouldn't be able to escape the demonic tribulation, so she had deliberately left him this letter. Many thanks. After saying this, Ning Chen turned around and left. Hold on. Luotian stood up and said. Ning Chen stopped and turned around, waiting for the former to speak. The corners of Luotian's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a faint smile. She said, Is it very difficult to suppress the demonic nature? In the Luoshui realm, I look forward to the Jiming Marquis return. When Ning Chen heard this, the coldness in his eyes intensified. In the blink of an eye, he turned around and left. Judging the situation, you've improved. Luotian smiled and said softly. Although she didn't know why the devil body of the knowing destiny state would stay in the human world, she had to admit that this arrangement was really unexpected. Presumably, the various sects in the world were still in the dark. The Scarlet Devil that they had always feared had become the military advisor that they relied on the most. Outside the Luoshui realm, Ning Chen turned around and his eyes flashed. The Luoshui god lived up to his name. To a certain extent, he was even scarier than the sovereign of the human world. In competitive Peak City, when the sun rose from the east, Jiming returned and threw who hadn't woken up, back onto the bed. Then, he took out the letter that Luofei had left for him and read it carefully. Jiming, when I saw the letter, I had already left with Zi. Zi is fine, there's no need to worry. You're different from Zi. Zi is too kind and entered the seamless realm, unable to escape. Relatively speaking, your understanding of the human heart is better than anyone else in the world. No matter what, you can maintain the greatest rationality. However, the sin of killing millions is not something that can be resisted by humans. Sooner or later, you will also have to face the punishment of the demonic tribulation. When Zi entered the demonic path, I checked the Eternal Night scripture. Unfortunately, I only found a few bits of information. I hope it will be of help to you. Demons and demonic tribulations are not the same. Demons themselves do not have demonic tribulations. The reason why demonic tribulations exist is because of the conflict between human nature and demonic nature. Only by proving one's heart can one reach perfection. However, proving one's heart does not necessarily mean one's human nature. It is more likely that the demonic nature will completely devour one's human nature. Zi has reached the critical moment of proving his heart. I took him away because I did not want him to be disturbed by the human heart of this world. As for whether I can help him find his original heart, I am not sure. Remember, one day, when you also face this day, it is important to find your human nature. However, if the world does not give Jiming a chance to find his human nature, then completely enter the demonic path. You have done enough for the human world, there is no need to force yourself. I hope we can meet again. Take care. There were not many words, not even a page of ink, but it was the deepest care of a friend who had gone through life and death together. Perhaps, only those who truly cared about you would not care whether you were a human or a demon when you met again. After Ning Chen finished reading the letter, demonic fire rose from his hand and burned the letter completely, leaving no trace behind. Outside the military advisor hall, a guard quickly stepped forward and knelt down. "What is it?" asked Ning Chen calmly. "The Heavenly Palace's army has mobilized human sovereigns. The front lines are in an emergency. The Alliance sovereign has asked you to go over and discuss it," said the guard respectfully. "Oh." When Ning Chen heard this, a wisp of surprise flashed in his eyes. "So fast? You can leave first." "Yes." After dismissing the guard, Ning Chen walked toward the conference hall. The 10 human sovereigns were sitting in the Hall of the Sovereigns with serious expressions. Clearly, the emergency at the front lines made them feel pressured. When Ning Chen walked in, the 10 human sovereigns stood up and respectfully welcomed him. "What happened?" asked Ning Chen, who was now the military advisor. "I don't know. Heaven's Sanctum suddenly launched an attack and sent out 5 human supremes to participate in the battle. Mu Hua, Qi Wei, and Bai Li all suffered different degrees of injuries. The allied forces also suffered heavy losses. They lost 4 cities in a single day," Zhao Liusu said in a low voice. Ning Chen frowned slightly. It was not normal for the Heavenly Palace to use their human sovereigns before the inner realm. From the start of the war until now, apart from the first battle, neither side had used their human sovereigns. It wasn't that they couldn't, but that they didn't want to. This was a tacit understanding of war. The destructive power of human sovereigns was too shocking. Unless it was a decisive battle or as a last resort, no one was willing to use it. "Are there any important resources near the 4 cities that were seized?" asked Ning Chen after thinking for a moment. "No." Zhao Liusu shook her head. "Strange." Ning Chen got up and walked over to the map. He looked at it for a long time, but he still didn't see anything important about the 4 cities. If it wasn't for the resources or important checkpoints, then what was the Heavenly Palace's goal? Seeing the military advisor pondering, the 10 human sovereigns also remained silent. The Grand Xia's Jiming Marquis was more experienced than anyone else. This was what they lacked. Alliance sovereign, immediately send people to help the 3 human sovereigns. Mu Hua and the others are in danger. After a long time, Ning Chen's eyes sank. When the 10 human sovereigns heard Zhao Liusu's words, they were all startled. They didn't understand. Perhaps defeating a human sovereign was possible, but killing a sovereign was not as simple as they thought. If a sovereign wanted to leave, even if there were 2 experts on the same level blocking them, it wouldn't be that easy. Unless the opponent was a supreme expert like the Sword Sovereign, only then would it be possible to kill a sovereign in a one-on-one battle. "Everyone, I'm not joking with you. The decisive battle is about to begin. If you don't want anything to happen to the 3 sovereigns, immediately go and help them," said Ning Chen when he saw the other sovereigns looking at each other. This time's war would be different from the past. That celestial minister didn't even think about taking over the Central Plains step by step. Instead, he was preparing for the decisive battle right after he finished mobilizing his troops. Of course, this method had greater risks, but if the heavenly palace wasn't prepared enough, it was also a rare opportunity. It had to be said that Celestial Minister was truly daring to enter the decisive battle as soon as the war began. However, from another point of view, this also exposed a problem with the heavenly palace. They lacked time, a great lack of time. Gambling would always be a taboo for a commander. It was impossible for Celestial Minister to not know this, even if it might catch the heavenly palace by surprise. Report. Just at this moment, the battle report came from outside the palace. Come in, said Xiao Liusu. The guard ran in, reported the battle, and then quickly retreated. Xiao Liusu opened the report, and her expression changed. Alliance Sovereign, what happened? Asked Xianjin Sovereign. Battle report from the front lines. Half a day ago, the Heavenly Palace's army attacked again. An unknown expert attacked and killed Mu Huazuan in less than 30 moves, said Zhao Liusu. When the 10 sovereigns heard this, their expressions sank. How was that possible? Was it the Sword Sovereign? Asked Xianjin Sovereign. In the entire Heavenly Palace, the only person who could kill a sovereign in less than 30 moves was the Sword Sovereign. No. Zhao Liusu shook her head. The report specifically mentioned that this person wasn't the Sword Sovereign. When the sovereigns heard this, their expressions became extremely ugly. Just the Sword Sovereign was enough to make them extremely wary. Now, there was another expert who wasn't any weaker than the Sword Sovereign. Did the heavens really want to destroy the Central Plains? Military Advisor. Zhao Liusu looked at Ning Chen. What should we do now? Xianjin Sovereign, immediately send someone to Luo Divine City to inform Alcade King about this matter. Tell him to be more careful. Sovereign Wen Yang, you're responsible for calling back all the sovereigns except for Sovereign Hong Lu, who is taking care of the refugees outside. As for Sovereign Bailey and Sovereign Qi Wei, there's no need to send anyone to support them. It's too late. They'll definitely know about Mu Huazuan's death before we do. They'll know what to do. Also, Sovereign Li Shan, go and replace Mu Huazuan to stabilize the army's morale. From today onwards, the strategy will change. We don't have to care about the gains and losses of each city, even if it's a large city with war resources. If we can't defend it, destroy all the resources. Last but not least, and the most important thing, all the sovereigns should be on standby at all times. Yes. When the sovereigns heard this, they bowed respectfully. Chapter 566. In Eternal Heaven City, Tianxiang stood still. Battle reports were constantly being sent back from the front lines. The war between the two realms had begun, and victory had to be decided in the shortest amount of time. At the same time, on the battlefield between the two realms, Tian Fu's army was divided into 3 groups. Each group was led by 2 supremes, and they advanced towards the north with all their might. Their fierce attacks forced the allied forces to retreat again and again. The price of not being able to destroy the Heaven's Manor army that day was now clear. The Heaven's Manor army had left their home, and their numbers were no less than the Central Plains army. Adding on the advantage of sovereigns, the Alliance army was forced into a passive position. However, even with the advantage at the front lines, Xiao Bieli's face didn't reveal any joy. Tianxiang, is there something wrong? Fan Xinghong looked at Tianxiang in confusion. Xiao Bieli looked ahead and nodded. The battle seems to be in our favor, but it's not progressing as quickly as we imagined. The Alliance army of the Central Plains' main goal is to drag things out, and they rarely clash head-on. Although they've been defeated time and time again, they haven't been destroyed. They've only lost a few unimportant cities. Xinghong doesn't know much about war. If there's anything I can help with, please tell me, said Fan Xinghong. Xiao Bieli sighed. That Jiming Marquis did everything perfectly. If we had enough time, it would be a joyous thing to have such an opponent. However, the Heaven's Manor doesn't have time, and we can't afford to drag things out. Tian Xiang, what do you mean? Asked Fan Xinghong. Kill the Jiming Marquis, said Xiao Bieli. Fan Xinghong's eyes narrowed. In the end, it still came to this. Your mission is to work together with the Vermilion Bird to eliminate the Jiming Marquis. I've already found a way to deal with it based on the way the Jiming Marquis fought with you in Nether City. When the time comes, the Vermilion Bird will cooperate with you and create an opportunity for you. Remember, the Jiming Marquis battle experience is incomparable to ordinary people, and he'll quickly adapt. If you can't kill him within 10 moves, immediately retreat, said Xiao Bieli. Yes, said Fan Xinghong respectfully. In the Hall of Venerables of Competitive Peak City, Ning Chen looked at the map of the army in the hall and inserted a bamboo stick into it from time to time. He was weighing the gains and losses of each city and the impact it would have on the allied forces. Pingyu City, 10,000 reinforcements. After 10 days of delay, more than 2,000 have died. Retreat. Yes. Jinhui City, we have 10,000 reinforcements. We have stalled for 15 days, and 3,000 have died in battle. Retreat. Yes. Pingyuan City, 20,000 reinforcements. Defend and fight to the death. Yes. One after another, orders were passed down from the Hall of Supremes. All the human Supremes looked solemn. They knew very well that the current battle situation was obviously unfavorable for the central region. However, the military advisor's arrangement had already preserved the combat power of the Allied forces to the greatest extent. No one could say anything about it. The fierce offensive of the Heaven's Mansion army had exceeded everyone's expectations. The battle had just begun and they had already entered the decisive stage. This was something that had never happened before. That celestial phenomenon had spared no expense in his fierce attacks, causing the Allied forces to feel the greatest pressure. Advisor, if this continues, the Heaven's Mansion army will attack the north sooner or later. Are we going to keep defending like this? Reverend Xianzhen stood up with a worried expression. In war, if you win, you have to defend. Right now, the Allied forces are just paying back their debts. Right now, the Heaven's Mansion army is basically on par with the central region. With the threat of that Peak Supremes, who knows when they will attack, only by defending can we reduce our losses, replied Ning Chen as he looked at the map. Is this situation irreversible? Asked Reverend Wen Yang in a deep voice. Situation? When did I say that we're at a disadvantage? Said Ning Chen indifferently. Everyone was startled when they heard this. Anyone could see that the Allied forces were being pushed back again and again by the Heaven's Mansion army. Advisor, please tell us, said Zhao Yosu from the main seat. I've said it before. Gambling is always a taboo for a leader. If you win, you'll be caught off guard. If you lose, you'll suffer a crushing defeat. The chances of winning are 50-50. Alliance Master, if you were in my shoes, would you place your hopes on a single bet? Ning Chen said calmly. I wouldn't. Zhao Yosu shook her head. She believed that neither the Inner Realm nor the Heaven's Mansion could afford to lose this war. This kind of gamble was too risky. You wouldn't, and the Minister of Heaven shouldn't do this, especially when they have the advantage in numbers. The only explanation for that Minister of Heaven making this choice is that the Heaven's Mansion needs time. Ning Chen's lips curled into a cold smile as he said, if the Heaven's Mansion army and the Allied forces continue fighting step by step, with the Minister of Heaven behind them, the chances of victory are only 50-50. However, in the current situation, the Heaven's Mansion army's chances of victory are less than 30%. Everyone looked at each other when they heard this, and the worry in their hearts was greatly relieved. Advisor, you mean that the Allied forces have the advantage right now? Asked Zhao Yosu softly. Not completely. We do have the advantage in the overall situation, but looking at the overall situation, we're still in an absolutely passive position, said Ning Chen honestly. Zhao Yosu frowned when she heard this. What do you mean? Simply put, although the Allied forces are losing again and again, this situation will slowly reverse soon. Of course, the precondition is that the Allied forces don't make any more intolerable mistakes, said Ning Chen. What about that expert comparable to the Sword Sovereign? Will he become a variable? Asked Zhao Liusu. Alliance Sovereign, what do you think is the reason for this situation? Without him, the Heavens Mansion wouldn't even have the qualifications to gamble. The 30% chance of victory I mentioned is because of his existence. Otherwise, how could the Heavens Mansion army have a 10% chance of victory, said Ning Chen indifferently. When everyone heard this, a weird look flashed across their eyes. What an arrogant Jiming Marquis. Other than his ability to set up a trap, the arrogance in his words was very different from the martial Marquis of Xia. Report. At this moment, a voice rang out from outside the hall, drawing everyone's attention back. Come in, said Zhao Liusu. Alliance Sovereign, the Heavens Mansion has sent a letter of challenge, said the guard respectfully. Zhao Liusu took the letter, puzzled. Why would they send a letter of challenge at this time? Ning Chen walked back from the map and calmly asked, what is it? A letter of challenge from the Sword Sovereign of the Heavens Mansion, said Zhao Liusu gravely. Oh. Ning Chen took the letter and glanced at it. His eyes narrowed slightly. Could it be that they couldn't wait, or did they have other plans? Send the letter of challenge to the Sunset Divine City. Ning Chen waved his hand and sent the letter back. Yes. The guard respectfully accepted the order and left the hall. Alliance Sovereign, Military Advisor, this battle is extremely likely to be targeted at the Alcade King. We have to be on guard, reminded Xian Jin solemnly. In the Alliance army, only the Alcade King had peak battle strength. But in the Heavens Mansion camp, apart from the Sword Sovereign, there was still an unknown expert. If they took advantage of this opportunity to attack, even the Alcade King wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. I understand your worries, but this battle can't be avoided. Zhao Liusu sighed softly. The Sword Sovereign's letter of challenge couldn't be rejected by the Alcade King. This day had already arrived when the battle between the two realms had begun. Military Advisor, do you have any ideas? Asked Zhao Liusu. Send someone to invite the Tai Bai Prefecture Lord, Dean Bai Lu, and the Venerable Bodhi, said Ning Chen after thinking for a moment. The Venerable Bodhi and the Tai Bai Prefecture Lord are both injured. I'm afraid they won't be able to stop that expert, said Zhao Liusu worriedly. It's fine. Although the two of them are injured and aren't at their peak, they were once peak experts. They have experience fighting peak experts. With Dean Bai Lu's help, even if they can't stop him, they'll be able to delay him for a while. In addition, the Sword Sovereign and the Alcade King's battle will be held in the Windless Plains. It's about the same distance as Competitive City and Eternal City, so it's considered fair. However, you must pay attention to the sovereigns of the Heavens Mansion at all times. As for the people in Competitive City, it'll still be the Alliance Sovereign and Venerable Li Shan. With the two of them, even if the Heavens Mansion attacks, they'll be able to hold on until the sovereign's return, said Ning Chen. Advisor, how about we use this chance to attack Eternal City, suggested Venerable Li Shan. That's impossible. That celestial minister won't leave Eternal City so easily, especially at such a crucial time. Although he's only fought once, it's clear that his attainments in formations are extraordinary. In this battle, we're being tied down by too many sovereigns. It's hard for us to split our attention. It's almost impossible for us to attack Eternal City, said Ning Chen. Advisor, have you ever thought about what would happen if that expert didn't interfere and the Alcade King lost in a fair battle? Asked Zhao Liusu. I can only say that you'd best pray that such an outcome doesn't occur. Otherwise, the chances of the Heavens Mansion winning this battle will be over 70%. Even if the Central Plains is lucky enough to win, it'll be an extremely bitter victory, said Ning Chen calmly. Everyone fell silent. Without a doubt, that was an outcome they didn't want to see. A messenger appeared in Eternal City, delivering a letter. In front of the chessboard, Xiao Bieli stopped playing chess. Glancing at the reply from Peak Competition City, he destroyed the letter and continued playing chess. On the chessboard, black pieces and white pieces crisscrossed. It was impossible to see who had the advantage. However, there was killing intent everywhere. With each step, people could deeply sense the difficulty of placing a piece. Celestial Minister Mu Chang'e appeared and bowed. Sword Sovereign, remember, you can only win this battle. You can't lose. Xiao Libi said the last word. Understood. Mu Chang'e nodded. On the chessboard, a large dragon was formed. The finishing piece was the finishing piece. In the end, the deciding factor of victory or defeat was still absolute martial strength. Even the wisest person would make a mistake. Even the wisest person wouldn't be able to plan every step of the way. The existence of absolute martial strength could simplify the battle to the greatest extent, making up for the inadequacies of scheming. The wisest person helped the situation. The wisest person helped the situation. The celestial minister was the true decision-maker of the heavens mansion. For the sake of the general situation, he would create a killing trap. Chapter 567. In Sunset Divine City, the sword god was nurturing his sword. His battle intent had reached the peak of his life. This battle might be the last battle of his life, and he didn't want to have any regrets. Senior Alcade Hong Yi appeared in the city and bowed respectfully. Ning Chen, no matter what the result of tomorrow's battle is, don't let anyone interfere, said the Alcade King. Ning Chen frowned and said, Senior, how confident are you in winning this battle? 40%. After wasting 100 years, his sword wasn't as sharp as it had been 100 years ago. Compared to him, the heavenly mansion sword sovereign was at his peak. His chances of victory were less than 50%. I need a victory. Or perhaps the Central Plains sects need a victory. Senior Alcade, you can't lose this battle, said Ning Chen. I will do my best, said the Alcade King. The Heavenly Mansion's Fan Xinghong requests an audience with the Central Plains Sword God. At this moment, a cold voice rang out from outside Sunset Divine City, interrupting their conversation. Come in, said the Alcade King. Many thanks. As he spoke, a stream of light flashed past and a black-clothed young girl arrived. In the blink of an eye, she was already in their line of sight. May I ask why you've come? Asked the Alcade King. I'm here on behalf of the Heavenly Minister to gift you a sword. Fan Xinghong pulled out the silk in her hand, causing an ancient sword that glowed with piercingly cold light to fly out and descend onto the divine Tao altar with a clang. This is the separation sword. It's the only divine weapon in the Heavenly Mansion that can rival the Heavenly Tower. The sword sovereign wanted a fair battle, so he asked the Heavenly Minister to give it to you, said Fan Xinghong softly. The Alcade King looked at the sword in front of him and didn't refuse. He calmly said, when you return, please thank the Heavenly Minister and the sword sovereign for me. I accept this sword. My realm has already shown enough sincerity. I hope your realm can follow the agreement and treat this battle fairly, said Fan Xinghong seriously. Don't worry. I've already warned that no one is allowed to interfere, said the Alcade King. There's no need to doubt the Alcade King's reputation. However, at this point, Fan Xinghong changed the topic. She looked at the red-clothed young man and sneered, it's hard to believe the credibility of some people. When Ning Chen heard this, the corners of his mouth curled up as he said, Miss Fan, when you say, someone, are you referring to me? Mr. Bai, or should I say, Marquis Jiming, do you think your reputation is trustworthy? Fan Xinghong asked indifferently. Hey, Miss Fan, you must have misunderstood me. Knowing Destiny has always been a man of his word. Everyone in the world knows that. Ning Chen smiled. Master Bai, the thickness of your skin is even more impressive than your swordsmanship, mocked Fan Xinghong. You're overpraising me, Ning Chen said indifferently. Fan Xinghong snorted coldly. She looked at the man on the divine altar and said, Alcade King, I'm sure you don't want this battle to be ruined by someone's scheme. I have a suggestion that I hope you'll consider. Please speak, the Alcade King said. From now until the end of the battle tomorrow, I'll follow the Jiming Marquis and prevent anyone from using schemes to ruin this fair battle. The Alcade King looked at the red-clothed young man and said, Ning Chen, you can decide this yourself. Fan Xinghong also looked at him and said indifferently, Jiming Marquis, if you don't have any ulterior motives, you shouldn't have any reason to refuse this suggestion. My strength is far inferior to yours, so I can't pose any threat to you. After tomorrow's battle, I will naturally leave. Of course, you can also refuse, but your existence is the variable that my realm is most worried about. If your realm can't guarantee that tomorrow's battle will be fair, then my realm won't make any more promises. Ning Chen glanced at the Alcade King on the god's altar. A moment later, his gaze shifted to the black-clothed young girl beside him. He smiled faintly and said, Lady Fan is truly eloquent. I have no objections to your conditions, but I'm afraid you'll be wronged. It's just one day. I can still endure such a small grievance, said Fan Xinghong coldly. Then I'll have to ask Miss Fan to leave with me. Ning Chen smiled. Soon after, he bowed towards Alcade King on the divine altar and said, Alcade King, this junior will take his leave first. The Alcade King nodded. Ning Chen turned and a cold light flashed through his eyes. He didn't stay any longer and directly walked away. The two of them left. The Alcade King sighed softly and closed his eyes once more, preparing for battle. The sun rose and set. Night and day flew by. The day of the battle was approaching. Both realms were nervous. On the windless plains, the black-clothed man stood still. A sword stood in the sand. His divine weapon, Heavenly Tower, hadn't been unsheathed, but its sword pressure swept out in all directions. Footsteps rang out from the north. White robes fluttered in the wind and sword intent spread. The Central Plains sword god of 100 years had come. There was only one sword in the world. Kings would never meet another king. Today, the peak had appeared together. Heaven and earth mourned. Mu Chang'e. Ji Yaoguang. Please. Without any greetings, the Heavenly Tower and Separation Sword were unsheathed at the same time. In an instant, the windless plains was filled with wind and sand. Sword 2, Jadefall. Mu Chang'e was the first to attack. An aura of death spread out from the Heavenly Tower. With a slash of his sword, the void for 5 miles shattered. The Alcade King didn't dodge. He blocked the Jadefall. With a loud bang, sword chi scattered everywhere. Both sides were as still as mountains. Only the dust and sand were sent flying, indicating that this battle was different from the past. Using a probing move against an enemy is disrespectful behavior, said the Alcade King indifferently. It was Mu Chang'e who was disrespectful. Sword 5. Fuha. Mu Chang'e formed a sword with his fingers. The Heavenly Tower trembled. The Yellow Springs had no way out. Crossing the bridge of helplessness, the peak of the sword had appeared once more in the world. In an instant, sword intent swept through the world. Dark clouds covered the horizon and thunder shook the heavens. Sword tribulation, limitless. The limitless king's might was world-shaking. The Alcade King stepped forward and a huge sword wheel appeared. Limitless sword light tore through the air, meeting the incoming attack. With a loud explosion, the peak of the sword techniques violently collided. The windless plains rapidly collapsed. Sand filled the sky and waves of dust spread out. Sword 7. Extreme Heaven. Before the waves of dust had even dissipated, Mu Chang'e's sword soared into the sky. His sword intent soared as he once again used one of Sword Sovereign's famous moves. The Heavenly Tower left his hand. The sand in the sky was drawn towards it and soared into the sky. Immediately, swords began to condense, forming a sky of swords. The Alcade King narrowed his eyes. He clenched his hand, and the heavenly tower returned to his hand. Sword tribulation, limitless. The sword tribulation appeared once more. Sword light soared from the ground like rain, shaking the heavens. Sword after sword collided in the world, rumbling and howling. Sword 8, Emperor's Sword. The Sword 7 appeared. Mu Chang'e once again grasped the heavenly tower. With a shout, he condensed the sword intent that filled the windless plains. The Emperor's Sword that had never appeared before appeared. The sword intent that filled the world rapidly converged in all directions. The Emperor's Sword caused all the swords in the world to submit. The Alcade King had never seen such a sword before. His vital energy soared, and the wind and clouds swirled around his sword. The endless sword met the sword. In the next moment, the two extremely brilliant sword lights collided in the mortal world. After a short moment of silence, there was a great tremor as if the sky was collapsing and the earth was caving in. The sword might that the windless plains could not bear dissipated for no reason. Ah! With a groan, the sword light pierced through his shoulder. His white robe was dyed red. The ultimate move had injured a king. On the other side, Mu Chang'e landed on the ground. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. Sword sovereign of the Tianfu sect, you live up to your name. Sword sovereign of the Zhongzhou state, you are disappointing. After a round of fierce confrontation, the black-robed and white-robed figures stood facing each other. Their sword intent did not dissipate. Instead, it increased. The world-shaking battle of swords shocked all the spectators. The power displayed by the two sword divinities of this era was truly terrifying. So, it turned out that the sword could reach such a high level. Although the battle between the legendary swordsman of the eastern region and the Taibai Palace Lord had also shocked the world, the difference between the two was too great. The legendary swords could not be fully used from beginning to end. The shock it brought was not as clear as today. Although it's not obvious, the Alcade King is indeed at a disadvantage, Reverend Yusheng said worriedly. The Central Plains could not bear the result of the Alcade King's defeat. This was a devastating blow. Once the Alcade King was defeated, Heaven's Sanctum Supremes, who were already slightly stronger, would have an overwhelming advantage, causing the balance of the war to be completely unbalanced. Where is the military advisor? Why don't I see him? Reverend Qing Yu asked. I don't know. I haven't seen him since yesterday, Reverend Yusheng said. On the other side of the battle, three figures appeared. Reverend Bodhi, the Taibai Palace Lord, and Dean Bai Lu were quietly watching the battle. At the same time, they were on guard against that unknown expert from the heavenly sanctum. Are the three of you waiting for me? As he spoke, the void swirled, and a purple-robed man walked out. He looked at the three people before him and spoke indifferently. The three reverends' expressions sank. As expected, this person had come. Everyone, there's no need to be nervous. I'm just here to watch the battle. Today's main characters aren't us, so there's no need to waste our energy, said the purple-robed man. Just as everyone's attention was focused on the battle in the windless plains, 300 miles to the north, the path of the life-knowing swordsman who had come to watch the battle was completely blocked. Space shook, and a red-robed figure silently appeared. Their faces were exactly the same, and there was no difference at all. This scheme that had been planned for so long had finally revealed its killing move. Ning Chen glanced at the vermilion bird in front of him and then at Fan Xinghong behind him. He immediately understood everything. Reverend Tian Xiang really thinks highly of me. He spent so much effort to set this up. So it was just to take my life, said Ning Chen. If you die, no one in the 5 regions will be able to stop the heavenly sanctum, said Fan Xinghong coldly. I'm very curious how you and this vermilion bird that hasn't fully transformed will be able to kill me, said Ning Chen. You'll know soon enough. Fan Xinghong formed a hand seal, and her aura rapidly rose. In a breath, she broke through the 3-disaster realm and reached the half-step sovereign realm. A secret art? Unfortunately, it's still not enough. Ning Qin sneered. His silhouette flashed quickly. The white fan, clear sun, and Li fire appeared. Sword light soared into the sky and started the battle. Chapter 568. In the windless plain, sand was billowing. The clash of swords was getting hotter and hotter. The surging sand waves showed how intense this battle of swordsmen was. Divine weapons clashed, and sword radiance spread out. The battle between two kings shocked all the experts of the two realms. It was hard to believe that the power of humans could reach such a level. The Separation and Heavenly Tower were two divine weapons that stood side by side. They were like two peerless swordsmen fighting. The sounds of their swords were mournful, creating the most beautiful harmony. In the battle, both of them were dyed red. They were at the same peak, but different sword wills bloomed in the sky. The spectators were mesmerized. The two kings stood side by side. They were the only ones on the sword. Their swords surpassed the limit and showed the power of the celestial path that was rarely seen in the world. The treading celestial path, which had not appeared in thousands of years, was like a dream at this moment. It was as if it had appeared in the world. Ninth sword. The sword wills kept rising and accumulating. The ninth sword appeared, and everything became still for a moment. Then, the magnificent sword radiance rushed into the sky. The world turned into a world of swords. Divine domain. The Tianfu war god opened the divine domain on the sword. The sky was filled with thousands of swords. The most shocking sword move made the world tremble. The sword wills spread, and the human supremes retreated quickly. They could not hide the shock on their faces. The Tianfu sword venerable was the miracle of the sword world. Outside the battle, the venerables of the Tianfu war god had mixed feelings. In the past 100 years, the Tianfu Holy Land had always been a mountain that the various factions could not cross. There was no doubt that the star venerable who controlled the fate of one star was the strongest person in the Tianfu war god. However, the person who brought despair to the various factions was not the star venerable who rarely fought, but the Tianfu war god, Mu Chang'e. 100 years ago, when Mount Digui rebelled, the sword venerable took action and flattened the entire Mount Digui. Since then, the various factions had been silenced. 10 years ago, the sword venerable made a mistake in comprehending the sword. His soul was injured, and he fell into a coma. Only then did the various factions breathe a sigh of relief. If the existence of the star venerable was an illusory deterrent, then the existence of the sword venerable made the various factions of the Tianfu war god feel powerless. It was difficult to surpass him. In the battle, the divine domain on the sword appeared. Within 100 li, the sword light crisscrossed and crisscrossed. The void was unable to withstand the might of this extreme martial art. Piece by piece, it collapsed. This shocking move caused the heaven and earth to wail unceasingly. Brilliance flashed across Alcade King's eyes. The separate gather sword in his hand shone brightly. The move of sword testimony had also appeared in the world. 8 void reincarnation, sword tribulation, unruffled. The sword of oblivion, the sword of oblivion. The white-robed Alcade King stepped into the air, and his black hair instantly turned white. The century-old sword god of the Central Plains, Oblivion, proved his sword, and regretted it for the rest of his life. The most powerful sword had broken through the god realm. It cut through the sword flow and reached the sword venerate. At the final moment of the world's most powerful sword art, the sword of Oblivion broke through the god realm. Just as the venerable sword was about to be defeated, the scattered sword light suddenly flew back and condensed into one. 10th sword, Zhu Xian. A sword that had never been seen in the mortal world appeared at this moment. A terrifying sword pressure spread out, and the sandstorm in the sky disappeared immediately. The windless plain sank more than 100 feet. The two extremes on the sword collided with a loud bang. The 9 heavens trembled, and lightning flashed across the void, illuminating the dim world. In the shocking aftermath, 2 figures flew out, covered in red, and landed on the ground. The tips of their swords pierced the ground and stopped. In the situation of a draw, only blood splashed and dyed the surrounding ground red. The most powerful battle was about to end with the final bell. Venerable sword, that's enough. The plan has succeeded. Stop. At this moment, outside the battle, a man in purple appeared in a flash and said calmly, "I can't stop." A faint light flashed in Mu Changa's eyes. Then, his blood origin suddenly burst out. The final sword intent broke through the restraints of his physical body and rushed to the 9 heavens. Sword. 11. 300 miles north of the Windless Plain, Red Sparrow and Fan Xinghong had trapped and killed the Knowing Destiny state cultivators. Ning Chen attacked first. He used the clear sunly fire as a sword and rushed toward Fan Xinghong. The vermilion bird moved. Its red feathers gathered and turned into a blood-red sword. It swung the sword and blocked the leaf fire white fan. Sword light surged. The 2 people who were like mirror images started fighting again. Every move came from the same source, but they were also different. At the same time, Fan Xinghong stomped her foot and moved her blade. The extremely fast blade swept past like a willow in the wind. It was hard to distinguish. The blade, sword, and fan clashed. With a bang, the aftermath spread and the 3 of them took half a step back. Ning Chen knew that his body couldn't be stabilized, so he didn't want to continue fighting. He stepped on the water and retreated. "You want to leave? Don't even think about it." Red Sparrow's figure flashed. She turned her sword and blocked the water. Every move was like a prophet. After 3 moves, Ning Chen felt the pressure on his body double. He was restrained everywhere when he used his moves. Knowing Destiny Marquis, you won't be able to escape today. Fan Xinghong pressed forward again. Her willow blade cut through the soul and pressed forward. The blade and sword worked together. Every move was fast and heavy. It was as if every move was predicted. Ning Chen was in danger. The 2 most important people in Tian Xiang's trap had both fought with Knowing Destiny Marquis before. After Tian Xiang broke through them one by one, they became Knowing Destiny Marquis, trapping the enemy and forcing him to his death. The 2 worked well together. Each move was more vicious than the last. In order to get rid of Tian Xiang's biggest problem, Fan Xinghong attacked without defending. Her moves were vicious and unavoidable. In the blink of an eye, 10 moves had passed. With a slash, the sword light brushed past Fan Xinghong's shoulder and cut through his red clothes. A strand of black hair fell down. 4th sword, River of Forgetfulness. An opportunity appeared. Fan Xinghong used her willow blade. Sword Venerable's sealed move reappeared in the killing trap. Due to the limitations of her body, it was difficult for the sealed sword to reach its full potential. However, at this critical moment, the River of Forgetfulness became a fatal move. "You're going too far." At the moment of life and death, Ning Chen's eyes were cold. He no longer cared about hiding his identity. He waved his fan and pushed Vermilion Bird away. He retreated 10 feet and stepped forward. His phoenix origin and demonic aura rose rapidly. Sword style, bloody path. With a sword style, a demonic move appeared. A bloody shadow rushed out in an instant. Its murderous aura was so dense that it was suffocating. Clear Sunsley fire was covered in blood. With a bang, the 3 weapons collided. The aftershock spread for thousands of feet. Vermilion Bird and Fan Xinghong's mouths were dyed red. Different moves and different auras turned the situation around instantly. Sword style, bloody flame. The demonic body moved again. Each move was stronger than the last. Terrifying murderous aura condensed around his body. Endless bloody flames rushed from the ground into the sky. In the next moment, Fan Xinghong's red clothes flashed and the bloody flames burned the sky. Both of them focused and held their weapons together to block the demonic move. However, blood spurted out. Unable to withstand the demonic move's power, the two of them were sent flying again. Retreat! Vermilion Bird didn't want to fight anymore. She shouted and used her talent to quickly retreat from the battle. He's gone. You can stay behind. Ning Chen's murderous aura had already risen. A scarlet light flashed in his eyes. He rushed forward and arrived in front of the young girl. His white fan surged with bloody light. Fan Xinghong blocked with her saber. Her mouth was dyed red again. However, even though she was injured, her saber didn't stop at all. It streaked across the sky and once again pressed forward. Ning Chen snorted coldly. He opened his white fan and blocked the saber light in front of his chest. Then, he used his sword fingers to break through Fan Xinghong's Qi Si. Fan Xinghong didn't dodge at all. Instead, she took the attack head-on. The willow saber in her hand changed hands and once again pierced towards the person in front of her. Do you think it's that easy? Ning Chen leaned to the side. The moment they passed, he condensed Yuan in his left hand and used all his strength to strike the young girl's chest. With a muffled groan, his palm broke her heart. In an instant, blood filled the sky and dyed the wasteland red. Fan Xinghong was sent flying dozens of feet away. The moment she landed, she used the momentum to quickly leave. Looking at the disappearing figure, the murderous aura in Ning Chen's eyes gradually disappeared. What a celestial minister! If the phoenix body really was here today, it would be difficult for him to escape unscathed. Within Eternal Heaven City, Xiao Libi was sitting in front of a chessboard. However, the piece in his hand had yet to be placed. His heart was filled with worry, and his heart was in chaos. He was unable to calmly make his plans like before. Celestial Minister. Just at this moment, a black light flashed and Fan Xinghong appeared. 2 steps later, she fell to the ground. She was no longer able to hold her saber. Xinghong. Xiao Libi's pupils constricted. He quickly rushed forward and knelt down to help her up. I am sorry. I failed. Fan Xinghong vomited a mouthful of blood from within the celestial minister's embrace. Her spiritual sense was gradually fading as she weakly spoke. Didn't we agree that within 10 moves, you would immediately withdraw? Xiao Libi's heart was filled with pain. He is a great enemy of the celestial minister. I don't want him to live. Blood flowed from Fan Xinghong's mouth. I understand. You're too foolish. Your meridians have been destroyed, and I'm unable to save you, said Xiao Bieli. Enough. Enough, Minister of Heaven, I came back, to remind you that Marquis Jiming and Tianfu Star Shi may not be the same. Before he could finish speaking, his arms fell to his sides. Before he could finish speaking, he disappeared with the wind. Xinghong. Xiao Bieli's body trembled, and the pain made it difficult for him to breathe. The title of Marquis, the position of Prime Minister, the position of supremacy in the world, at this moment, seemed so pale and useless. That night, it was raining heavily. The little girl, who was only 5 or 6 years old, had nowhere to go. Her little clothes were tattered, and she fainted in front of the Prime Minister's residence. That night, he saved the little girl and took care of her day and night. In the end, he saved the little girl's life. From that day onwards, the little girl stayed by his side. They helped each other in times of need. For more than 20 years, they never left each other. After 20 years of ups and downs, the little girl had slowly grown up. Accompanying her had already become a habit. He had never thought that the little girl who had always been by his side would one day leave his side. The heavens were merciless. They used a game of chess to determine the fate of the chess piece. Victory and defeat were commonplace in the game of chess. However, the black and white pieces of chess had a short life. Who could they talk to? The falling leaves in the sky fell onto the chessboard. A single piece moved gently. It was as if the falling leaves were talking about their short lives. Not far away, the sleeping girl was so quiet. This time, it was impossible for her to wake up again. Heavens, Minister of Heaven, so the person you treasured is also on your chessboard. Ha! A bitter laugh echoed through the cold wind. A figure slowly stood up. It was impossible to see his expression. Holding the sleeping girl, he walked east step by step. Chapter 569. In the windless plains, the master of the Pill Tower, Celestial Venerable Ling, appeared to stop the battle. However, how could the battle of the king's sword be stopped so easily? Sword. 11. With the 11th sword, blood spurted out from Mu Changa's body like mist. Cracks appeared on the heavenly hearing tower. Before the move was unleashed, boundless sword pressure engulfed the entire windless plains. Comprehending the sword in a day, 3 souls were damaged. Sleeping for 10 years, the sword that couldn't be tolerated in the mortal world finally appeared today. The sword's extremity was limitless. The soaring sword will shook the heavens and earth within 100 miles. A shocking sword move. Around Mu Changa, a waterfall of sword light surged and roared. It was magnificent and boundless, a perfect move that exhausted all human strength. In this battle of the pinnacle swordsman, it transcended the limits and appeared in the mortal world. In an instant, the windless plains that was ravaged by the battle quickly collapsed. Large areas of land collapsed, and the shocking aftershocks continued to spread in all directions. Celestial Venerable Ling saw this and her expression changed. She quickly retreated and left the battle. 100 miles away, the expressions of the human sovereigns also changed. They didn't dare to stay any longer and quickly retreated. Alcade Sr. At this moment, a red shadow flashed past. Ning Chen, who had just escaped from the killing trap, rushed over and saw a shocking scene. Ning Chen, from today onwards, the future of the central state is in your hands. In the battle, Alcade King looked back and softly instructed. He then stepped into the air, and the separate gather sword hummed softly before turning into dust and dissipating. Immortality is useless, immortality is foolish, sword calamity, soul burial. Amidst the sound of dust waves, a soul-stirring sword. The king's form dissipated, and the 3 souls transformed into swords. It was born out of the corporeal body and surpassed the limits of the mortal world, slashing open the path to immortality. The 2 extremes that stood side by side and the final sword that abandoned everything broke into the realm of immortality at the same time. They were like the 2 most dazzling divine suns in the world. Endless brilliance could be seen clearly for thousands of miles. In the next moment, the 2 extremes collided and shook violently. The aftershocks swept hundreds of miles, and the entire windless plains was instantly destroyed, becoming history. At the edge of the battle, the spectators were all affected and were sent flying. The blood around them churned violently. Alcade Sr. Outside the aftershocks, Ning Chen barely stabilized his body. He took a step and rushed towards the center of the battle. At the same time, the human sovereigns also reacted. Their figures flashed as they rushed toward the battlefield. After the great battle, not a single part of the windless plains was left intact. On the sunken ground, there were intersecting huge gullies that were so deep that the bottom could not be seen. The shocking battle caused everyone present to feel fear in their hearts. Senior. Ning Chen rushed into the battlefield and looked around for traces of the Alcade King. However, all he could see was a mess and he couldn't see anyone else. At this moment, a black-robed figure fell from the sky and crashed onto the ground. His body was covered in blood and there was no trace of life in him. Sword Venerable. Celestial Venerable Ling appeared and took a step forward to Muchanga. She flipped her palm and her expression immediately changed. At the same time, the Grand White Mansion Lord, Venerable Bodhi, and Dean Bai Lu appeared and surrounded him. Jiming Marquis, the battle is over. Do you still want to increase the casualties? Celestial Venerable Ling ignored the three people around her and looked at the red-clothed youth not far away. Let him go. Ning Chen's eyes flashed with coldness as he spoke. Upon hearing this, the three venerables opened up a path and didn't stop him. A rational decision. Celestial Venerable Ling said and left with Muchanga in a flash. Military Advisor. Venerable Xian Zhen and the rest also appeared in the battlefield and spoke with solemn expressions. Return to Competitive Edge City. Ning Chen ordered and didn't stay any longer. He turned and left. The venerables accepted the order and followed silently. No one expected this result. In this battle, both the Heaven's Mansion and the Inner Realm suffered heavy losses. There was no winner. Sword Venerable's 11th sword was no longer a move of the mortal world. Arcade King also used his life to execute a move that surpassed the limits of the mortal world. In the end, the battle between the two was still undecided. In Competitive Edge City, in the Hall of Venerables, Zhao Yosu and Venerable Li Shan were anxious as they waited for the outcome of the battle. The dazzling sword light just now could be clearly seen from thousands of miles away in Competitive Edge City. No one could have predicted the result of this battle. Military Advisor. Seeing the red-clothed youth appear, Zhao Yosu immediately went forward and asked, "What's the result?" "The entire army of the Heavenly Prefecture will be here soon. Alliance Venerable should prepare for battle as soon as possible." Ning Chen spoke in an indifferent tone before leaving the hall. Behind him, Venerable Xian Zhen and the rest made way for the military advisor. No one dared to stop him. What happened? Zhao Yosu felt that the atmosphere wasn't right and asked solemnly. Arcade King died in battle, and Sword Venerable's fate is unknown. However, even if he survives, he's crippled. Venerable Xian Zhen sighed softly. Zhao Yosu heard this and trembled. How could this be? Alliance Venerable, now's not the time to be sad. What the military advisor said just now is the most important thing. Venerable Li Shan walked forward and reminded him seriously. Zhao Yosu nodded and suppressed the heaviness in his heart. Pass down the order, prepare for battle. Yes. The venerables received the order and replied respectfully. In Eternal Heaven City, purple light gathered, and Celestial Venerable Ling appeared. She carried Muchanga, whose soul had been damaged. The once famous Sword Venerable had all his meridians shattered, and he was now a cripple that was neither alive nor dead. Her consciousness swept over, and Celestial Venerable Ling's eyes focused. She rushed out and headed 100 miles to the east. Outside Eternal Heaven City, under a red maple tree, Heaven Minister stood silently. In front of him was a lonely new grave covered with falling red leaves. Heaven Minister. Celestial Venerable Ling walked out and said. Xiao Bieli turned his head and saw the figure in her arms. His body trembled violently. Chang'e. 2 steps forward, Xiao Bieli's raised hand trembled. In a day, the successive blows made the usually calm minister of heavenly manner unable to hide the pain in his heart. Sword Venerable used the 11th sword, and I couldn't stop him. Celestial Venerable Ling blamed herself. It shouldn't be like this, it shouldn't be like this. Xiao Bieli's hands cracked as he clenched them. He was filled with regret. Why? Heaven Minister, Arcade King has fallen, and Central Prefecture's last hope is gone. Why don't we take this opportunity to attack and wipe out the allied forces? Celestial Venerable Ling said solemnly. Xiao Bieli looked at the unconscious Muchanga and was speechless. After a long time, he said slowly, Go. Yes. Celestial Venerable Ling respectfully accepted the order. Half a day later, the entire army of Heavenly Manor marched north. Their vast aura covered the sky. With the strength of a realm and the help of human sovereigns, they were unstoppable. They broke through the Allied forces' defense line like a hot knife through butter. City after city, fortress after fortress, the army of Heavenly Manor continued to march north. Their attacks were endless and abnormally ferocious. Central Prefecture was in danger. The various sects were terrified and immediately sent out strong practitioners to reinforce the front lines. However, it was too late. In less than half a month, Central Prefecture's allied forces were defeated again and again, losing dozens of cities. Competition City, Hall of Venerables. An oppressive atmosphere spread. Human sovereigns were silent. They felt deep despair and helplessness for Central Prefecture's fate. Beside the main seat, Red Shirt was in deep thought. Zhao Yosu wanted to say something but stopped. The anxiety on his face was difficult to hide. From the beginning of the war until now, every word he said had become reality. Alcade King died in battle, and Central Prefecture was completely defeated. It would be difficult for them to fight against Heavenly Manor's army. Beneath the main seat, Reverend Li Shan finally couldn't take it anymore. He stood up and asked, "Advisor, is the defeat really irreversible?" Beside the main seat, Ning Chen came back to his senses. He looked at the sovereigns below and said calmly, "Yes, peace talks." Hearing this, the sovereigns were stunned. Peace talks? How was that possible? Advisor, the conditions that Heavenly Manor gave before were already too much. Now that they have the absolute advantage, they'll definitely go from bad to worse, Zhao Yosu said in confusion. The conditions won't go too far, but it'll be hard for people to accept. If we want to reverse the situation, this peace talks are necessary. Ning Chen stood up and said indifferently. He then walked out of the hall. Alliance Sovereign, please arrange for the peace talks between Heavenly Minister and Central Prefecture as soon as possible. As for who will negotiate, it's not important. His last words kept echoing in the hall. Everyone looked at each other. No one understood what the military advisor was trying to do. Alliance Sovereign, Reverend Xian Zhen stood up and said. There's no need to say any more. Do as the advisor says. Zhao Yosu raised her hand to stop him from continuing. Yes. The Xianzhen sovereign helplessly sighed and bowed. In Tianheng City, the Central Prefecture's peace talks letter was delivered. Dong Sun, Zhenyang, Tai Xian, and the other sovereigns looked at the Heavenly Minister in front of them, waiting for his reply. If they could take over Central Prefecture without shedding a drop of blood, that would be the best choice. Although the Heavenly Manor had the advantage, they had also suffered great losses. Furthermore, the time left for them was decreasing. The Heavenly Manor's destruction was right in front of them. The sooner they ended the war, the more people they could save. 3 days from now, in Tianluo City, we'll negotiate, said Xiao Bieli coldly. Dong Sun, Zhenyang, and Tai Xian bowed deeply. They knew that it wasn't easy for the Heavenly Minister to give up on his personal feelings and agree to negotiate. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. In Tianluo City, human sovereigns appeared one after another at the front lines of the two armies. They were all here to negotiate. In order to show their sincerity, Zhao Yosu personally came. On the Heavenly Manor's side, the Heavenly Minister also appeared in Tianluo City to negotiate. Where's the Jiming Marquis? Why isn't he here? Asked Xiao Bieli as he glanced at the various representatives of the Central Prefecture. The final decision is still in our hands, so it's more appropriate for us to directly negotiate, said Zhao Yosu. You? Xiao Bieli sneered, do we have the right to do that? The Xianzhen sovereign was infuriated. He suddenly sat up, but Zhao Yosu glared at him. We came with sincerity. The Heavenly Minister's overbearing words will only make it difficult to negotiate, said Zhao Yosu. The Jiming Marquis hasn't arrived, so I don't want to waste words. Our conditions are still the same as before. The various powers will withdraw from the central prefecture, and the heavenly manor will promise not to invade the other 4 regions. Otherwise, the day the central prefecture's war ends will be the day the flames of war ignites in the next region, said Xiao Bieli coldly. Bailey, Reverend Li Shan, and the others' expressions sank. Such conditions clearly meant that they didn't want to negotiate. Chapter 570. 1,000 miles north of Heaven Luo City, at Wanqing Pass, Ning Chen walked over while holding Yin-er's hand. Qing Ning followed beside them, not knowing why they had come here. Yin-er. Ning Chen handed a bunch of flower seeds to the little girl. Plant these seeds well. Once you're done, come ask me for more. Okay. Yin-er obediently answered. She ran to the side with the flower seeds and began to plant them one by one. This is... Qing Ning looked at the flower seeds that the little girl had dropped. There seemed to be something wrong with the devil's snare flower seeds. This is a devilized devil's snare flower seed I obtained in the devil will see. The flowers it blossoms are extremely poisonous, and it's hard to resist. Ning Chen picked up the flower seeds and explained. You don't plan on negotiating? Qing Ning quickly reacted and narrowed her eyes. Negotiations require equal rights to speak. Otherwise, it'll just be one-sided bullying, said Ning Chen calmly. The current Central Plains didn't have that right, so this negotiation wouldn't have any effect. Your target is the Heavenly Mansion's army? Asked Qing Ning. No, the Heavenly Mansion's army isn't the key to this war. The true deciding factor is the 2 realms' human supremes, said Ning Chen as he buried the flower seeds. Can the devil's snare flower's poison affect supremes? Asked Qing Ning. No, but it can draw the Heavenly Mansion's human supremes here, said Ning Chen. So what if they draw them here? The Alliance's current supremes aren't enough to keep the Heavenly Mansion's human supremes here, frowned Qing Ning. I don't expect them to be of any use. Ever since they retreated in front of Heaven Eternal City, I no longer trusted them. Ning Chen straightened his body and smiled. Speak properly. Why are you still pretending in front of me? Scolded Qing Ning. When Ning Chen heard this, the smile on his face disappeared, and he said, the phoenix physique left me something before she left. It just so happens that I can use it here. Sister Qing Ning will know about it soon. I'm done planting them. At this moment, Yin-er jogged over, stretched out her fair and tender little hand, and laughed happily. Ning Chen smiled and placed another bunch of flower seeds in her hand. Yin-er is amazing. I still have a lot more. I'll try to plant them all today. All right. Yin nodded, then turned around and ran away, continuing to work. You've already killed too many people. If possible, try to avoid killing as much as possible. Qing Ning sighed. Don't worry, Sister Qing Ning. I know what to do, Ning Chen replied. At the same time, in Tianluo City, the negotiations between the 2 realms had reached an impasse. The conditions offered by Tianxiang were difficult for the venerables of the central state to accept. For thousands of years, the foundation of the various sects had been in the central state. How could they give it up? Celestial Minister, the Heavenly Sanctum's goal in invading the inner realm is to plunder resources. There is no need to be so overbearing when it comes to territory and territory, said Venerable Li. The Heavenly Abode wants resources, but the Heavenly Abode won't give up territory. Xiao Bieli slowly said. Zhao Liusu's eyes darkened as she said, Heaven Minister's attitude is that he doesn't want to negotiate at all. Peace talks? You were the ones who suggested it. My realm merely stated the conditions for withdrawing, said Xiao Bieli coldly. It's a matter of resources. Zhongzhou will try our best to satisfy your demands. However, no matter what, the various sects may withdraw from Zhongzhou. This is our bottom line, said Zhao Liusu. If that's the case, then we'll meet on the battlefield. Xiao Bieli wasn't moved at all. As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere became abnormally heavy. The negotiations that were about to continue caused all the venerables present to be on full alert. Celestial Minister, please wait for a day. I need to discuss your conditions with the military advisor first before making a decision, said Zhao Yosu gravely. At this time tomorrow, I'll be waiting for your reply. Xiao Bieli stood up and spoke indifferently, and then he strode off. The venerables of the heavenly sanctum followed closely behind him. Within the peace discussion hall, the venerables of the alliance fell silent. Without a doubt, this negotiation had failed. Venerable Li, go invite the military advisor, said Zhao Yosu. Yes. Venerable Li stood up and accepted the order. In Wanqing Pass, the sky gradually darkened. Er's 3 minutes of labor had long since disappeared. She was sleeping soundly in Qing Ning's embrace. Not far away, Ning Chen was carefully burying the mandala flower seeds one by one. By the time he finished planting all the seeds, the sky had already turned completely dark. Above the 9 heavens, the moon shone brightly, sprinkling down a faint chill. Ning Chen stood in the wilderness, and with a flip of his hand, a waterfall of spring water surged out. It sprinkled down like rain, perfectly watering every piece of land. In the next moment, a strange scene occurred. Mandala flowers grew one after another, and black flowers bloomed. It was extremely beautiful. Woke up in a daze. Seeing the flowers growing around her, her eyes lit up. She slid down from Qing Ning's embrace and ran forward, reaching out to touch them. Seeing this, Ning Chen stepped forward and picked her up. He said softly, "There's poison. If you touch them, you'll get worms." When heard this, she hurriedly retracted her hand. Her delicate little face was filled with fear. "Let's go to Tianluo City," said Ning Chen as he glanced at Qing Ning. "Okay." Qing Ning nodded and followed behind. In Tianluo City, in the Alliance camp, Venerable Li returned and anxiously said, "Alliance Venerable, the military advisor isn't in competitive Peak City." Hearing this, Zhao Yosu's expression froze. She suddenly stood up and said, "The military advisor didn't leave any message?" "No," Venerable Li shook his head. "Send someone to look for him," Zhao Yosu said. "There's no need to look for him." At this moment, Hong Yi appeared outside the main hall and walked into the hall step by step. Military advisor, Venerable Li bowed. "Venerable Li, you can leave first." "I have something to discuss with the Alliance Venerable," Ning Chen said calmly. "Yes." Venerable Li accepted the order and immediately turned to leave the main hall. "Military advisor, where did you go?" Zhao Yosu walked down from the main seat and asked in confusion. "Wanqing Pass," Ning Chen said honestly. "Why did you go there?" Zhao Yosu frowned and asked. "To prepare for a rainy day, or rather, to add some variables to this war. I'll explain this to the Alliance Venerable in the future." "How's the peace talk going?" Ning Chen said. Zhao Yosu shook her head and sighed. "There's no room for peace talks at all. The conditions set by the Minister of Heaven are not something that the sects in Zhongzhou can accept." "The sects will give up the entire Zhongzhou?" Ning Chen asked. "Yes." Zhao Yosu nodded. "Even resources won't work?" Ning Chen asked once more. "Yes." Zhao Yosu nodded once more. "Strange." Ning Chen's eyes flashed. There were only 2 goals in war: territory and resources. But the Heavenly Palace planet was very far from the inner realm. Compared to territory, resources seemed to be more important. In their 2 talks, the Minister of Heaven had refused to give up on the matter of territory. It was truly strange. "Military advisor, tomorrow is the final deadline. Do you have any ideas?" Zhao Yosu's expression was grave. "Peace talks absolutely won't allow the Heavenly Palace planet to give up. This war will continue. Other than to draw the Heavenly Palace planet's attention, my other goal is to test the Minister of Heaven's bottom line, said Ningchen calmly. Zhao Liusu narrowed her eyes. Then what about tomorrow's negotiations? I'll go talk. Alliance Venerable can go back and arrange for the sects to continue preparing for war. In addition, before the war reaches Wanqing Pass, we'll fight to the death, said Ningchen. Zhao Liusu was silent for a long time. Finally, she said, Military advisor, can you tell me the truth? In your heart, do you really think the Central Plains has a chance of winning this war? Ningchen smiled. Alliance Venerable, there's a saying. If you use someone, don't doubt them. If you doubt them, don't use them. Since I've accepted the position of military advisor, I'll think of a way for the Central Plains to win this war. I'm not so bored as to waste my time fighting a war I'm sure we'll lose. With military advisor's words, I'm relieved. I'll go back as soon as possible. As for the peace talks, I'll leave them to you, said Zhao Liusu. Don't worry. Ningchen nodded. At the agreed time in the peace discussion hall, both sides arrived. Xiao Bieli looked at the red-robed youth in front of him. Killing intent flashed across his face, and he icily said, Greeting Marquis, you still came. The Minister of Heaven's unyielding attitude forced Greeting Marquis to come. Ningchen smiled. I'm very curious. Now that things have reached this point, do you really think peace talks can solve this problem? Sneered Xiao Bieli. If the Central Plains sects want peace talks, then the Heavenly Sanctum's sects should want peace talks as well. Similarly, Greeting Marquis also hopes to resolve this war peacefully. The only one who doesn't want to talk is the Minister of Heaven, said Ningchen indifferently. Is that important? As long as you can satisfy my realm's conditions, I'll immediately order my troops to retreat, said Xiao Bieli coldly. The Minister of Heaven has forced the Central Plains sects into a dead end. Aren't you worried that they'll choose to destroy each other? Asked Ningchen calmly. Even if they want to destroy each other, they need to have the strength to do so. Greeting Marquis, you should know why the Central Plains has been able to hold on until now. If it weren't for the other 4 regions and your help, the Central Plains would have long since fallen to my heavenly sanctum. However, Xiao Bieli's tone changed. Do you think the other 4 regions can provide even more assistance? Although my realm came from afar and can't take down the entire inner realm, it's more than enough to take down 2 regions. No one would complain about having more resources and territory. Don't you think so? The Minister of Heaven's words are correct. However, the Heavenly Sanctum probably doesn't have the time. How long do you think the Minister of Heaven thinks the Central Plains sects can delay the war if Greeting Marquis does its best? Smiled Ningchen. Xiao Bieli's eyes turned cold. Greeting Marquis, being too smart isn't necessarily a good thing. If you really do that, then once the Heavenly Sanctum takes over the Central Plains, their next target will be the Eastern region. What an unpleasant conversation. Ningchen's expression also turned cold. He stood up and said, Since we can't come to an agreement, then let's fight it out on the battlefield. Minister of Heaven, Greeting Marquis will be waiting for you to take the initiative to propose peace talks. That day will never come, said Xiao Bieli coldly. Nothing is absolute. Minister of Heaven, let's meet again on the battlefield. Ningchen stood up and smiled. He took Yin-er's hand and left. Chapter 571. War raged in Zhongzhou. Tianfu's army, which had been unstoppable, met with the most stubborn resistance from the Alliance army. Between Tianluo City and Wanqing Pass, the armies of the 2 territories kept fighting. No one was willing to back down easily. In Jingfeng City, battle reports were sent to the Hall of Venerables one after another. The expressions of the human sovereigns were getting worse and worse. Zhongzhou couldn't hold on any longer. A month after the peace talks, all the sects had sent out all their forces. Together with the vanguard troops from the other 3 territories, they tried their best to stop Tianfu. However, the difference in strength between the two armies was too big. It was only a matter of time before they were defeated. Zhao Liusu stood up and asked, "When will the reinforcements from the other 3 territories arrive?" "At least a month," Venerable Li Shan replied. "What about the requests for help sent to Heavenly Music Parlor, Tianfu Mountain, and Southwind Ridge? Did they reply?" Zhao Liusu asked. "The Lord of the Heavenly Music Pavilion does not see outsiders. The people I sent were directly blocked outside the Heavenly Music Valley by a woman. Tianfu Mountain has been sealed for several years for some unknown reason, and no one can go up. As for the remaining 7 sects, the supreme sages of 4 sects have agreed to come and help, while the other 3 have politely refused," Venerable Li Shan said in detail. 4. Zhao Liusu squinted her eyes. Since the start of the war, more than 10 human sovereigns had come from the other 3 territories. This was probably the limit of the 3 territories' help. It would be difficult to ask for more help in the future. Zhao Liusu turned her head and asked the young man in red, military advisor, "We've done our best. How much longer do we have to hold on?" Beside the main seat, Ning Chen recovered from his contemplation and said slowly, "Enough. Before sunset tomorrow, the allied forces of all sects must withdraw from Wanqing Pass. In addition, Venerables, please be on standby at any time. I don't want to emphasize the same thing again and again. This is the last chance for the Central Plains. If you can't grasp it, please find someone else." Zhao Liusu looked at the Venerables and said coldly, "Tomorrow, if anyone dares to disobey the military advisor's orders, don't blame me for being ruthless." "Yes." The Venerables accepted the order and replied respectfully. After the meeting, the Venerables left one after another. Only Zhao Liusu, Ning Chen, and Yin were left in the main hall. Of course, the little girl could play on her own, and no one would disturb the other. "Military advisor, a month ago, you said that Heaven's Sanctum might be in urgent need of time. If Central Prefecture continues to prolong the war, is it feasible?" Zhao Liusu asked seriously. "Impossible." Ning Chen shook his head and said, "Dragging out the battle can only be used as a bargaining chip. It's not a feasible method. The reason why the Heavenly Mansion's army is in such a hurry to attack the Central Plains is most likely because there's a problem with the Heavenly Mansion star. However, the majority of the Heavenly Mansion's Xiantian forces have already been transferred to the Central Plains. Dragging out the battle will not only not benefit us, it will also infuriate the Heavenly Mansion." When Zhao Liusu heard this, she frowned slightly and said, "The allied army's innate combat power has no advantage over Heaven's Sanctum. In addition, the Supreme's combat power is at a disadvantage. How can we turn this situation around? If we can't get along well, then we'll make use of the right time and the right place. We can't be limited by the inertia of our thinking in war. Although there aren't many things that can threaten the human sovereigns, it's not like there aren't any. We'll use whatever we have," Ning Chen said calmly. "Karmic luck, earth veins, laws, fate," Zhao Liusu said slowly. Ning Chen nodded and said, "After all, this war is being fought in the Central Plains. The right time and the right place are on the Central Plains side. Being good at using what we already have is more useful than any reinforcements. Although that's the case, it's hard to use karmic luck or earth veins. Even if they could be used, the Heavenly Mansion's human sovereigns wouldn't be so stupid as to send themselves to their deaths," Zhao Liusu said with a puzzled expression. "If they don't want to come, then just invite them. If the Alliance sovereigns are interested tomorrow night, you can go and watch the battle. There's no need to stay in competitive Peak City for now. I think that the Heavenly Minister won't be in the mood to pay attention to this place tomorrow night," Ning Chen said calmly. In front of Wanqing Pass, the Allied army's leaders, who had been defeated time and time again, finally received orders from competitive Peak City to retreat. 6 human sovereigns appeared and blocked the Heavenly Mansion's army, covering the retreat of the Allied army. At Wanqing Pass, the Devil's Snare flowers stretched for thousands of feet. The black flower buds were so beautiful that people couldn't help but touch them. Boom! Thunder rumbled in the sky and dark clouds roiled, covering the setting sun. In the distance, a figure in a blue and white dress appeared. She looked at the red-robed youth beside her and said, "You owe me a favor." "Miss Bai, how can you ask for favors when friends help each other?" Ning Qin smiled. "If you don't want to, then I can stop." Bai Yunlian raised his hand, and the roiling dark clouds in the sky immediately showed signs of dissipating. Seeing this, Ning Qin immediately compromised. He helplessly said, "I'll agree to a favor." Within Wanqing Pass, the allied army retreated. The 6 human sovereigns also retreated, no longer continuing to fight. Behind them, the Heavenly Mansion's army split into 3 groups. One of them quickly reached Wanqing Pass and took over the Central Plains #1 stronghold. Outside Wanqing Pass, Ning Qin looked at the Heavenly Mansion's army and said, "Miss Bai, it's your turn." Bai Yunlian nodded. He raised his hand, and the dark clouds in the sky roiled. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, and heavy rain poured down. At this moment, within Wanqing Pass, the budding devil's snare flowers were being watered by the rain mixed with heavenly craft spring water, and they bloomed one by one. The devil's transformation bloomed, and a black mist curled up. It wasn't affected by the rain and spread out. At the same time, devil's vines spread out, constantly searching for life and nutrients. This shocking scene was like the nightmare of the devil will ocean. The Heavenly Mansion's army was shocked. The soldiers closest to the devil's flowers were bound by the vines, and their vitality was instantly devoured. "Destroy these flowers." Within the Heavenly Mansion's army, the 4 human sovereigns reacted and ordered. Once the order was given, the Heavenly Mansion's soldiers quickly destroyed the devil's flowers, uprooting all the devil's snare flowers. "It's useless." Outside Wanqing Pass, Ning Qin coldly smiled. Within the pass, the destroyed devil's flowers were scattered all over the ground. Suddenly, a soldier staggered and vomited black blood before falling down powerlessly. Following that, more and more people fell to the ground as black blood flowed out of their mouths. "Retreat." Seeing that the situation wasn't right, the 4 human sovereigns immediately gave the order to retreat. "We can't retreat." Hong Yi walked over from outside Wanqing Pass and poured her yuan into her palm. In the next moment, the yellow spring seal opened, sealing off all paths of retreat. 6 human sovereigns appeared at the same time and used yuan spirit seals to seal the Heavenly Mansion's army. Within Wanqing Pass, the ground was covered in devil's flowers, and the poisonous mist continued to spread. More and more soldiers were poisoned, and cries rang out everywhere. "Guard your yuan and qi. Protect your heart. Don't panic," Supreme Arcane shouted. He turned his palm and condensed essence energy to help the general beside him dispel the poison in his body. Hearing this, the Heavenly Mansion's army gradually stabilized and sat down cross-legged, circulating their yuan to resist the poisonous mist. "How is it?" Another Heavenly Abode's supremacy stepped forward and said with a grave expression. "The poison of these devil flowers isn't unstoppable, but the army is trapped here. As long as we can't get out, we'll be corroded by the poisonous mist. Sooner or later, we won't be able to hold on," said Sovereign Taishian. "It's fine. We just need to hold on for a little longer. The situation here can't be hidden from Minister of Heaven's eyes. Someone will come to rescue us soon," replied Venerable Tian Du in Eternal Heaven City. A battle report came. Xiao Bieli looked at it, and his expression turned cold. "Celestial Venerable Ling, it's your turn." "Yes." Purple light gathered, and Ling Tian appeared, accepting the order respectfully. After a moment, 5 figures rushed out of Eternal Heaven City. Ling Tian led the way, and the 4 human sovereigns followed him. In Wanqing Pass, the Heavenly Mansion's army was trapped. The 6 human sovereigns protected the Yellow Spring's divine seal, sealing off all paths of retreat. Within the divine seal, black poisonous mist was faintly discernible, corroding every soldier in the heavenly mansion's army. The shadow of death covered the entire Wanqing Pass. At this moment, 5 extremely powerful figures quickly approached from afar. Outside the divine seal, the 6 human sovereigns looked at each other. 3 of them stopped and turned their palms to block the leader. Back off. Celestial Venerable Ling waved her hand, and her vast true yuan shook the 3 human sovereigns back. Then, she swept past them and rushed towards Wanqing Pass. The fish has taken the bait. In the distance, Heng Yi's lips curled into a cold smile, without a shred of human emotion. The nature of a devil was cruel. Ling Tian entered the battle, and the 6 human sovereigns couldn't stop him. The other 4 human sovereigns worked together to break the seal, and the Yellow Springs divine seal, which had lost the support of the supreme sovereigns, collapsed instantly. The 9 human sovereigns of the heavenly mansion gathered, and the 6 human sovereigns immediately retreated, not wanting to continue fighting. Retreat, Celestial Venerable Ling said solemnly. I've said it before, there's no retreat. As soon as he said that, the void shook, and Heng Yi descended from the sky with a green coffin on his back, attracting everyone's attention. Marquis Ji Ming. The 9 human sovereigns recognized him, and their expressions darkened. With a bang, the green coffin landed on the ground. The moment it opened, a broken stone sword flew out, and a terrifying sword pressure surged out. Ning Qin hid behind the green coffin and used it as a cover. He slapped the hilt of Celestial Execution Sword, and it pierced the ground. Without a word, he ran away. Celestial Execution Sword vibrated, and a terrifying sword aura pierced thousands of feet into the ground. Under Wanqing Pass, the earth veins were destroyed, and they collapsed instantly. In the next moment, the earth energy soared into the sky, and Celestial Execution Sword flew out, absorbing the power of the earth veins. Thousands of sword auras exploded, engulfing the entire Wanqing Pass in an instant. Hell descended on the mortal world, and thousands of soldiers of the heavenly mansion exploded in the Celestial Execution Sword aura. Blood and chi filled the air, but they were immediately absorbed by the Celestial Execution Sword. Blood-colored sword lights fell like rain, and there was no way out. Outside Wanqing Pass, the 6 human sovereigns of the alliance couldn't hide their shock. They looked at the red-clothed young man in front of them, and the fear in their eyes was unprecedentedly intense. Just now, if they hadn't obeyed orders and retreated a moment later, they probably wouldn't have been able to come out now. Military advisor, when will you take back that stone sword? Sovereign Li Shan stepped forward and asked. Take it back. Ha! Ning Qin smiled faintly and said, I can't take it back. This place will be a forbidden land in the mortal world from now on. Chapter 572. Wanqing Pass was covered in a bloody mist and corpses were everywhere. The forbidden land that had appeared out of nowhere had destroyed everything within. There were forbidden lands in the human world, but they were all created by the heavens and earth. This was the first forbidden land that had been created by humans for thousands and thousands of years. The words, knowing destiny, once again shocked the world. A sharp sword was easy to find, but the sharpness of a sword was the true killing weapon. The executing immortal sword was already broken and no longer had its former might. However, in the hands of a knowing destiny, it had become a true symbol of death. The eruption of the earth vein's power had pushed the executing immortal sword's power to its limits. The earth vein's power was endless, and the executing immortal forbidden land would never disappear. When the sun rose from the east, the howls in the forbidden land had completely disappeared. The first rays of the morning sun shone down, and within the bloody mist, there were scattered white bones everywhere. At this moment, even the 6 sovereigns outside Wanqing Pass couldn't bear to see this. It was the first time they had seen such a cruel scene. There's no need to regret it. Since the beginning of the war, there has been no righteous side. There's no need for fake kindness, said Ning Qin calmly as he looked at the forbidden land. The sovereigns were silent. After a long while, Sovereign Wenyang said, "Advisor, did the 9 sovereigns who went in all die? If sovereigns died so easily, this war would have ended long ago. They wouldn't have died so quickly, but they won't be able to come out again. Let's go back to competitive Peak City and prepare for the aftermath." After saying that, Ning Chen didn't stay any longer. He turned and walked towards the north. The 6 human sovereigns looked at each other and immediately suppressed the fear in their hearts as they strode forward and followed him. They had already placed great importance on this advisor's ability, but they still underestimated him. After this battle, the Heavenly Province Army's strength had undoubtedly been greatly damaged. It would be difficult for them to have an overwhelming advantage in the future. Ning Chen and the 6 sovereigns returned to competitive Peak City. The battle report from Wanqing Pass had already been sent back ahead of time. Zhao Liusu and the other sovereigns personally came out to welcome the 7 of them. "Advisor, thank you." Zhao Liusu walked up and bowed respectfully. She knew very well that if it weren't for this person, the Central Plains wouldn't have made it this far. The sovereigns and the other sovereigns can take care of the following matters. "I'm tired, so I'm going back to rest," Ning Chen replied. He didn't enter the hall, and instead walked towards his palace. Up ahead, Qing Ning, who had been waiting for a long time, also left. Ning Chen walked into Wenxian Palace. After sitting down, he picked up a cup of tea. His right hand trembled as he poured the tea into his mouth. Killing people isn't something to be happy about, is it? Qing Ning walked forward and poured him another cup of tea. This shouldn't be happening. Ning Chen looked at his right hand, confusion in his eyes. He was a devil, so how could he be afraid? Nature is not so easy to hide. Qing Ning handed the tea to the former and said softly, "When Her Majesty and I picked you up and brought you to Weiyang Palace, you were simple and kind. We could see through you at a glance. Later on, you changed a lot. However, you just put on a mask. You haven't changed much. You still dislike war and hate killing people. I'm a devil." Ning Chen suppressed the throbbing in his heart that shouldn't be there. He took the tea and slowly said, "You only have the power and body of a demon. You haven't completely lost your humanity. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been trapped by the demonic tribulation, right?" Qing Ning replied, "I can't have my humanity. It will destroy me." Ning Chen drank the tea in one gulp. "Where's your sword?" Qing Ning softly asked. Ning Chen was puzzled, but he still took out Crimson Drill sword. Qing Ning took the sword from his hand and pointed it at her own heart. "Stab it and your demonic tribulation will pass." Ning Chen suddenly stood up and threw the sword to the side. His expression was extremely gloomy. He sternly said, "I don't need this method. I can pass through the demonic tribulation myself. You're too foolish." Qing Ning raised her hand and stroked the young man's cheek. A gentle smile appeared on her beautiful face as she said, "If there comes a day when you need strength, you don't have to be soft-hearted. In this world, you are the only person Sister Qing Ning cares about. Only you are the most important. Do you understand? I'll say it again. I can pass through the demonic tribulation myself. I don't want to hear those words a second time." Ning Chen's expression was unprecedentedly ugly. "All right, I won't mention it again." Qing Ning smiled and pulled back her hand. She turned and walked to a nearby room. "Where's Yin? She should still be sleeping. It was too dangerous last night, so I didn't bring her along." Ning Chen calmed himself down. "Bring her around today. You have to give her some compensation for dragging her around every day." Qing Ning smiled. "Yes." Ning Chen nodded his head and agreed. With a creak, the door was pushed open. Qing Ning walked into Yin-er's room and saw that she was still sleeping soundly on the bed. She couldn't help but smile helplessly. No wonder Yin-er didn't want to go back after coming out. What time was it now? She still hadn't gotten up. Wake up. Qing Ning walked over and softly called out. The little girl, who was still sleeping soundly, heard someone talking next to her ear. She immediately pulled the blanket over her little head and continued to sleep. I can't wake her up. Ning Chen walked over. Every time he tried to wake her up, it was always a huge problem. It's all because you indulged her too much. Qing Ning softly reprimanded. From Mingyu to to this girl, each one of them had been raised by this fellow like an ancestor. I'm just imitating the habits of the phoenix body. If I change too much, people will suspect me, said Ning Chen indifferently. Qing Ning couldn't be bothered to argue with him. She pulled the blanket aside and coaxed the girl up. How old are you this year? Asked Qing Ning as she helped the girl put on her clothes. 12.5. Rubbed her eyes. Are you married to someone? Asked Qing Ning softly. Er's face reddened and she hastily shook her head. No. She's just a child. How could she be married to someone? Ning Chen interrupted. What do you know? Qing Ning glared at him. 12 years old isn't a child. Furthermore, according to etiquette, you shouldn't be here right now. How much of the things I taught you in the palace have you memorized? Ning Chen didn't dare say anything else. The palace was filled with complicated etiquette, male and female rules, and there were too many to count. It would probably take him an entire day to memorize them. If he really had to memorize these rules, it would be better for him to compete with that heaven minister. Qing Ning rubbed the girl's hair and said softly, your big brother Ning doesn't care about rules. However, in this world, women are much harsher than men. In the future, you still have to pay attention to some rules. For example, go to bed at 2 and wake up at 5. Also, if your big brother Ning casually enters your room again, kick him out. Hearing this, Er's large eyes lit up. She nodded vigorously and said, okay. Ning Chen listened from the side and didn't say a word. After putting on her clothes, Qing Ning helped to freshen up. She tied 2 beautiful bows into her braids, making the already delicate little girl look even cuter. Looked at her reflection in the mirror and smiled happily. All right, let's go. Qing Ning held the girl's hand and smiled. Jumped down from the stool and looked at a certain person waiting by the side. She pouted and said, You're not allowed to drag me everywhere today. And, I'm not going anywhere today. I'll go wherever you want me to go. Ning Chen nodded and said. Indeed, he should compensate this lass. Running around these few days had also tormented this lass quite a bit. The 3 of them went out together and didn't care about the battle anymore. They held hands and walked towards the city. In front of the Hall of Venerables, Venerable Li Shan looked at between the two and frowned slightly. He didn't know why, but he felt that something was wrong. Alliance Venerable, why does the military advisor always bring that little girl from the sword-forging manor? Even for an important matter like the peace talks last time, this little girl was brought along, Venerable Li Shan asked. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. It's the military advisor's freedom to bring whoever he wants with him. If the military advisor is unhappy because of these small matters, it won't be good for anyone, Zhao Liusu warned. I understand. I'm just asking out of curiosity. I won't mention it in front of the military advisor, Venerable Li Shan replied. Zhao Liusu nodded and continued, tell the others to be careful as well. Don't get carried away just because of a great victory and put on airs in front of the military advisor again. It's true that the Central Plains won this time, but the strength of the 2 sides is only equal. I don't want to see competitive Peak City become the second Wanqing Pass, understand? Yes, Venerable Li Shan said respectfully. In the city, on the bustling streets, Qing Ning walked in front with while Ning Chen carried something and followed behind. Countless people had experienced how terrifying a girl could be when she walked on the streets. Ning Chen wasn't the first, nor would he be the last. He couldn't afford to offend Qing Ning, whether it was her original body, phoenix body, or demon body. As for Yin, he also couldn't afford to offend her when she was with Qing Ning. On the other side of the street, Shi Piaoxiu, who had just returned from running errands, smiled when she saw the three of them. She said, "Senior apprentice sister, junior apprentice sister's cultivation has been progressing slower and slower since we left the mountain. Don't act recklessly. The Marquis of Jiming isn't a great evil person and has done a lot of good deeds for the world. No matter what your intentions are, if you attack him, you'll be going against the mountain's rules," Bai Lingling warned again. "Great evil? That depends on what criteria you use." He turned Wanqing Pass into a forbidden area on his own. "If that isn't great evil, then there really isn't any great evil," Shi Piaoxiu chuckled. "If he didn't do that, then the war would have continued endlessly." "That's not a reason for you to attack him," Bai Lingling said in a low voice. "Senior apprentice sister, I don't care what the reason is. What I care about is whether or not junior apprentice sister can become a sovereign in this lifetime. As long as the Marquis of Jiming is alive, that possibility doesn't exist." Shi Piaoxiu's smile faded and she said calmly. "Junior apprentice sister is different from us. You can't just sever your bonds with the mortal world. If you forcefully sever them, who knows what will happen. You can't act recklessly," Bai Lingling said seriously. Shi Piaoxiu was about to speak again when suddenly, an extremely powerful aura appeared in the distance. The terrifying pressure caused the entire world to tremble. Chapter 573. On the streets of competitive Peak City, Ning Chen, who was shopping with Qing Ning and Yin, felt a powerful pressure coming from afar, and his expression changed immediately. Heavenly Mansion Star Venerable, Chao Tianxi. At this moment, all the strong practitioners in the 5 regions felt this power that surpassed the limits of the mortal realm, and their hearts sank. The worst-case scenario still happened. Qing Ning turned around and said softly, "Go, I'll take care of Yin, here." "Sorry." Ning Chen spoke apologetically, and then his figure flashed as he swiftly flashed towards the Hall of Revered Seniors. Yin pouted and raised her head. "Sister Qing Ning, he didn't keep his word. Didn't he say he would accompany me today?" "Yin, be good. Your big brother Ning suddenly has something important to do." "Sister Qing Ning will accompany you," Qing Ning said softly with a gentle expression. In the Hall of Venerables, all the human supremes in competitive Peak City gathered. Red light gathered, and Ning Chen appeared. He didn't waste any time and ordered, "Leave 3 supremes to guard the city. The rest of you follow me to Wanqing Pass." "Yes." The supremes respectfully accepted the order. Wanqing Pass, Immortal Execution Forbidden Land. The void shook, and a beautiful figure appeared. She wore a moon-white dress, and her black jade-like hair fell behind her. Her beauty was unparalleled, and she didn't wear any makeup. She was like a goddess from the 9 heavens, giving people an unapproachable feeling. Heavenly Mansion Star Venerable, Chao Tianxi, finally arrived in the 5 regions. He stepped into the sky and entered the Immortal Execution Forbidden Land. In the sky full of sword energy, 3 figures struggled to hold on and were about to reach their limits. Chao Tianxi waved his hand and opened up a path of light to receive them. Outside the Wanqing Pass, several figures arrived. 10 9 Heavens Supremes had arrived at the Immortal Execution Forbidden Ground. After a moment, 4 people walked out. Chao Tianxi looked at the 10 Supremes in front of him and said plainly, "Celestial Venerable Ling, take the 2 of them and leave first." "Leave this to me." "Yes." Celestial Venerable Ling accepted the order and quickly left with Tai Xian and Tian Du, who were heavily injured. "Stop them," Ning Chen said coldly in front of the 10 Supremes. "Yes." On Mount Li, Supremacy Xian Zhen and the other Supremes accepted the order and quickly chased after the 3. At this moment, Chao Tianxi moved. His white silk fluttered like a white rainbow, blocking everyone's path. None of you can get through. Don't waste your energy, Chao Tianqi said calmly. Heavenly Mansion Star Venerate, it's really a pity that you didn't die, said Ningchen seriously. Jiming Marquis, I didn't kill you on Tianfu planet. But it's not too late to kill you now. As soon as he finished speaking, Chao Tianqi's figure flashed and rushed forward. His palm condensed the power of wind and clouds, and slammed out. The battle began. Ning Chen retreated while the 10 sovereigns advanced. They joined forces to block the Heavenly Manor Star Sovereign. There was a loud rumble, and heaven and earth tilted. The 10 venerables all took a few steps back, and the corners of their mouths were dyed red. There was a clear disparity in strength. 1 against 10, the human supremes were defeated. Outside the battlefield, Ning Chen coldly watched the battle. He didn't believe that Chao Tianqi could recover so quickly. If the Hell King's enchantment could be broken so easily, then the title, Hell King, would be undeserved. Chao Tianqi glanced at the red-clothed young man outside the battlefield and said coldly, Jiming Marquis, your strength shouldn't be inferior to a human supremacy's. Why don't you attack? I'm just a military counselor in charge of planning. Fighting is not my specialty. Lord Star Venerate, you can ignore my existence, said Ning Chen as he waved his hand and a white fan appeared. Chao Tianqi snorted coldly. He turned around and used his palms to block wave after wave of attacks. Even she couldn't completely ignore the existence of a top-notch swordsman. This man's mind was really deep and frightening. Everyone, be careful. Lord Star Venerate has extraordinary attainments in the law of space and the law of ice. If you don't cooperate, I may have to collect your corpses, said Ning Chen as he watched the battle. Void destruction. Chao Tianqi's eyes turned cold. He raised his hand and pressed down. The void in front of him collapsed. The 10 sovereigns, who were reminded, immediately turned into a defensive position and joined forces to block the attack. With a shocking sound, the 10 sovereigns were dyed red in the collapsed void again. They had avoided the threat of death. Chao Tianqi used his vital essence again. The white silk around him fluttered. Snow fell from the sky. Extremely cold air spread out and turned the area within 1,000 miles into a world of ice and snow. Fire burning the city wall. When Yang Zuan stepped forward and used his extreme Yang technique to resist the law of ice falling from the sky. The other 9 sovereigns leaped forward and used their techniques to help Yang Zuan. The next moment, the sky and the earth were divided into 2. A sea of fire rose and formed a grid in the sky full of ice and snow. After a moment of stalemate, a purple-clothed girl appeared in the distant void. She waved her hand and a dark moon was drawn. A black light shot into the sky. In an instant, a black arrow broke through the space and came before the Star Venerate of the Heavenly Mansion. The arrow came suddenly without warning and broke into the battle in the blink of an eye. Chao Tianqi's eyes turned cold. He raised his hand and opened the prison of heaven and earth, trapping the arrow. However, after the first arrow, 2 more followed. They chased after the stars and the moon, pressing toward the Star Venerate of the Heavenly Mansion. The path of the secular world, 1 ultimate sword. At this moment, the void shook again. The chief of the Tai-Bai Palace appeared in the battle. He only had 1 arm and 1 sword. The Tai-Bai Palace's ultimate sword appeared. The path of the secular world appeared. In the terrifying torrent, the path sword cut through the ice and snow. The path of the path appeared again after the battle at the Grand Sky Moon Peak. Bodhi Heart Meditation, 1 thought to attain Bodhi. At the same time, on the other side of the battle, the Buddha technique appeared. The swastika shone brightly and rain fell. 1 thought to attain Bodhi, 1 thought to attain Great Tao. The 4 attacks cut off all paths of retreat. Outside the battle, Ning Chen stepped forward. Before he made a move, his sword will had already spread. How dare you! With a soft shout, Chao Tianqi's eyes shone brightly. His vital essence was released. Within 1,000 miles, the wind and snow howled and the space collapsed. Heavenly bright snow, chasing waves sinking into sorrow. With a loud bang, the snow waves surged with Chao Tianqi as the center. They spread rapidly. The entire sky turned into a sea of ice and snow. The white waves drowned everything in it. Monster! Outside the battle, Ning Chen withdrew his move and retreated quickly, avoiding the center of the storm. In the battle, the 10 venerables, Bodhi, and Tai Bai Manor's lord were all sent flying by the turbulent snow waves. Their blood spilled over 100 feet, and they were all heavily injured. Retreat! The situation was unfavorable. Ning Chen immediately ordered the troops to retreat. The venerables accepted the order and no longer lingered on the battle. They immediately retreated. In the blink of an eye, the venerables left. Only a pale figure stood quietly in the battle. The moment the wind and snow dissipated, a drop of blood silently dripped from the corner of her mouth. Just as Ning Chen expected, breaking the Netherworld King's barrier was not an easy task. Even though he used the power of one star to cast the star soul-flowing fire, the backlash from breaking the Netherworld King's barrier still caused Chao Tianqi to suffer unimaginable injuries. After being unconscious for half a month and resting for several months, he finally managed to suppress his injuries and rushed to Wanqing Pass to save people at the most critical moment. In competitive Peak City, the human venerables returned one after another. As soon as they landed, they all vomited blood. An expert who stepped on the immortal Tao was actually so terrifying. Ning Chen walked forward and said calmly, "Everyone, go back and treat your injuries first. The Alliance Venerables and I will take care of this place for now." The Venerables accepted the order and left one by one. "Advisor, what do we do now?" Zhao Liusu asked with a heavy expression. "Ask for help," Ning Chen said slowly. "All the human venerables from the 3 regions are here. The rest have already been rejected. It'll be difficult to invite them," Zhao Liusu said seriously. "Things are different now. It's not up to them whether they come or not," Ning Chen said indifferently. "What do you mean?" Zhao Liusu frowned slightly. Without the Heavenly Sect Star Venerables, the Heavenly Sect only has the ability to contend with 2 or 3 regions at most. The Venerables still want to be lucky, so it's normal that they can't invite them. However, now that the Heavenly Sect Star Venerables have appeared, it's not impossible for them to conquer the 5 regions. When the Alliance Venerables sent people to invite them, they directly said that if they don't come, the Central Plains sects will give up the Central Plains. Zhao Liusu was silent for a moment. After a while, she said, "Advisor, have you ever thought that there are no peak Khanate experts in the 5 regions? Even if they come, they won't be able to contend with the Heavenly Sect Star Venerables." "Contend? There's no need." Ning Chen smiled coldly. Although the Heavenly Sect Star Venerables have absolute power, the biggest difference between her and the Nether King is that the Nether King descended to destroy the world. He doesn't have any weaknesses to exploit. Chao Tianqi is different. She's a Star Venerables. She came to the Inner Realm to conquer at least one region for the Heavenly Sect. Since she's worried, she's not absolutely invincible. "Advisor, please speak clearly." Zhao Liusu didn't understand. "Alliance Venerables, do you think that the Heavenly Sect Star Venerables will dare to act without any scruples if the entire Heavenly Sect's army is in danger of being buried in the Central Plains? She's the only one with absolute power. It might be difficult to defeat or eliminate her, but it shouldn't be difficult to pin her down," Ning Chen said indifferently. "What do we do after that? With her around, we're still at a disadvantage in this war," Zhao Liusu said worriedly. "We have to take things one step at a time. Alliance Venerables, what you need to do now is to invite as many human sovereigns as possible from the other 3 regions. No matter how powerful an advisor is, he can't plan his next step without knowing the strength of his side, right?" Ning Chen smiled. At the same time, moonlight gathered in Tianheng City. Chao Tianqi walked out. Xiao Bieli, Venerable Dong Sun, Venerable Zhenyang, and the others all bowed, welcoming the Star Venerable's return. Minister of Heaven, you've worked hard these days. Chao Tianqi glanced at Xiao Bieli, who was the leader of the Venerables. Xiao Bieli has failed the Star Venerables, Xiao Bieli said with a heavy expression. It's not your fault. Chao Tianqi shook his head. I've learned a lot about the knowledge Marquis. Someone who can send the Nether King back won't be easy to deal with. The war has only officially begun now. You'll have plenty of time to fight him in the future. Yes, Xiao Bieli said respectfully. All right, everyone. From today onwards, let's temporarily forget about our previous failures. Minister of Heaven, you're the minister of the heavenly sect, so planning the war is your responsibility. As for what we should do next, please quickly arrange it, said Chao Tianqi calmly. Understood. Xiao Bieli respectfully accepted the order and stood up. His eyes were resolute once more. Chapter 574. On the Central Plains battlefield, the Heaven's Sanctum's army went around Wanqing Pass, which had become a forbidden area, and continued north. In the battle at Wanqing Pass, the Heaven's Sanctum lost 30% of its Khanate forces, and 6 Supremes died and 3 were injured. Fortunately, Chao Tianqi returned in time and stabilized the terrified army, causing the balance of the war to tilt towards the Heaven's Sanctum once again. Apart from the change in their peak forces, Chao Tianqi's return allowed the Heaven's Sanctum's minister to no longer defend Tianheng City, and he was able to appear on the front lines for the first time. The shift in the battle situation came so quickly. After Xiao Bieli appeared on the battlefield, the two armies worked together and cooperated well. In just 10 days, they conquered 7 cities and defeated the various sects in the Central Plains. In the meeting hall of Jingfeng City, the Supremes were still recovering from their injuries, and there were only 3 or 4 people in the hall. Zhao Liusu sat on the main seat, looking at the battle report from the front lines with a serious expression. Alliance Supremacy, where's the military advisor? Why isn't he here? Supremacy Qing Yu asked. To prevent the Heaven's Sanctum Star Venerables from attacking the city, the military advisor and the Taibai Palace Lord are working together to set up a formation in the city, Zhao Liusu replied. Will it work? Supremacy Qing Yu asked worriedly. At this time, we can only trust the military advisor, Zhao Liusu said seriously. In the city, Ning Chen and the Taibai Palace Lord worked together to set up a formation. Ning Chen even invited Bai Lingling through Qing Ning, and then Shi Piaoxiu came as well. Of course, there was also Yin who was forced to follow them. The Taibai Palace leaned towards the Dao sect, while the West Jade Mountain was undoubtedly the Orthodox Buddhist sect. Ning Chen had raided the Buddha Mountain, destroyed the Confucian sect, and cultivated the Dao sect's secret techniques. He was familiar with the techniques and formations of the 3 sections. Although he couldn't be considered to have mastered them, he definitely knew a little. However, knowing a little and knowing how to use it were 2 different things. Thus, Ning Chen invited 2 people, who were both Dao sect and Buddhist sect cultivators. Jiming Marquis, our Buddhist sect's formations are different from Taibai Palace's Dao sect's formations. It's very difficult to combine them, and it's not easy to increase their power, Bai Lingling said seriously. The 2 of you can continue to set up the formation. Leave the rest to me, Ning Chen said seriously. The Taibai Palace Lord and Bai Lingling nodded and set up the formation. Ning Chen, the difference between the Buddhist and Taoist formations is too great. It's almost impossible to fuse them together. This is just a waste of time, said Qing Ning. There's no need to fuse them. It's fine as long as you can each display your own strength. If my original body was here, perhaps it would be even better. But now, there's no other way. Let's just treat a dead horse as if it were still alive. Being prepared is always better than not being prepared, replied Ning Chen. Haven't we already sent people to Chongling? Qing Ning asked in confusion. After the Phoenix Avatar left last time, the female supreme sealed off Chongling. Before she reaches perfection, I fear no one can enter Chongling, Ning Qin said helplessly. How unfortunate. Qing Ning sighed softly. That female supreme's strength was extraordinary. Even her master, who was the third head of the Buddhist sect, did not dare to underestimate her. If they could invite her, she would be a great help to the alliance. Big sister Piao Su, why are you here? Not far away, the two idlers, Yin, and Shi Piaoxiu, were having a boring conversation. To accompany your sister Lingling. That's right, Yin, why does your big brother Ning drag you along wherever he goes? Shi Piaoxiu asked casually. I don't know either. Yin, shook her head and said, ever since big brother Ning took me out of Sword Forge Villa, it has been like this. Since I have nothing to do, I will take you along. Actually, big brother Ning is very good to me. Ha! Shi Piaoxiu smiled faintly. She really could not tell that this Jiming Marquis, whose hands were covered in blood in both legends and reality, was a person who cared for women. Yin, how did you meet? Shi Piaoxiu asked again. Yin thought and said, 4 years ago, Red Lotus Demon took me away from Sword Forge Villa. It was big brother Ning and big sister Bai who saved me. That's how we met. Hearing this, Shi Piaoxiu's eyes narrowed slightly. 4 years ago, Red Lotus Demon appeared out of nowhere in Central Plains. But at the same time, another demon appeared. In the end, when the world was punishing the demons, Zhao Yousu and Tianji City concluded that Jiming Marquis was Red Lotus Demon, and Red Lotus Sword was in Jiming Marquis' hands. However, the situation back then was too complicated. It was hard to tell whether it was true or false. Logically speaking, once one became a demon, it was impossible to turn back. But Jiming Marquis, who came out of demonic will see, was clearly not a demon. The truth was probably only known by Jiming Marquis. Perhaps little junior sister also knew something. From day to sunset, it took an entire day for the two of them to finish setting up the formation. Even though they were two Supreme Being experts, at this moment, their faces turned abnormally pale, and they had no choice but to return to rest for a while. Ning Chen, I'm going back to sleep. After a boring day, Yin, pouted and walked forward. Ning Chen came back to his senses. He almost forgot that this little girl was still here. He smiled apologetically and said softly, I'm sorry. After big brother Ning finishes his work, I'll take some time to accompany you. You have to keep your word. Yin, emphasized. I have to keep my word. Ning Chen nodded. Then I'll go back first. Yin, pouted and left. Qing Ning accompanied her and sent the little girl back first. After an hour, Qing Ning came back again. Ning Chen turned around and asked, sleeping? Yes. Qing Ning nodded and sighed softly. It's been hard on this little girl. She has to accompany you every day. Ning Chen was silent. Although the phoenix body gave him part of the phoenix origin to cover up his demon aura, the lack of human aura couldn't be replenished by the phoenix origin. He had no choice but to bring Yin along. Don't think too much. Yin never said anything. This little girl is actually very sensible. Let's deal with the heavenly mansion star venerate first. If there's a chance, we'll think of a way to compensate her, Qing Ning said softly. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and moved his right hand. Light overflowed and his figure moved between the Taoist and Buddhist formations. There were thousands of layers of divine restrictions, and the entire competitive peak city was divided into two. Sister Qing Ning, do you still remember the formation that Senior Dao Kuei and teacher used to fight against the Nether King? Ning Chen turned around and asked softly. I've seen it. My attainment in this area is too different, so I can't remember much, Qing Ning replied. I didn't see that battle, but when I was in the belly of the Taotai, I personally experienced Senior Dao Kuei's tactical deployments several times. Unfortunately, the tactical deployments I saw were not offensive. Therefore, I can only infer according to reason and see if I can use the tactical deployments in the Taibai Mansion and the West Jade Mountain to try to transform the tactical deployments I remember into offensive ones. Since Sister Qing Ning has seen Senior Dao Kuei's deployment, you can help me observe it. If there is any obvious deviation, please remind me as soon as possible, Ning Qin said seriously. I understand. Be careful, Qing Ning replied with a serious look. Ning Qin nodded and didn't say anything else. He put his fingers together and condensed his qi. The divine restrictions of the underworld were activated in all directions. In competitive Peak City, the Taoist and Buddhist formations were also slowly recovering. Golden and green light rose, resonating with each other. At the side, Qing Ning paid full attention to the operation of the formation. She didn't dare to be distracted. At this moment, purple light gathered not far away, and a purple-robed girl appeared. She looked at the red-robed young man and said, "Advisor, let me test the formation." Ning Qin frowned and said, "No, you're the leader of the alliance. If something happens, the entire alliance will be in chaos. Even if we want to test the formation, it won't be your turn. Then I'll do it." As soon as he said that, a golden light appeared, and Bodhi appeared. "Oh." Ning Qin narrowed his eyes and said, "Supreme Bodhi, aren't you worried that I'll use the power of the formation to take revenge?" If Marquis Jiming was a narrow-minded person, he wouldn't have agreed to help Central Prefecture fight against Heaven's Sanctum, Bodhi said calmly. Jiming isn't a gentleman, but he doesn't want to be a villain. If I want to kill you, I'm not in a hurry. Enter the formation. I hope your Buddha will protect you, Ning Qin said indifferently. Chapter 575. In competitive Peak City, the night sky shone. Under the moon, the Knowing Destiny formation opened. Azure and golden light rose, forming the peak Taoist formation of the past. Within the formation, Bodhi circulated his cultivation to the extreme, resisting the reincarnation power of the grand formation. At the eye of the formation, the Knowing Destiny formation and Qing Ning observed the formation. Divine restrictions spread out, separating the two formations, not allowing them to clash. In the next moment, the entire grand formation began to rotate. With the divine restrictions as the boundary, the Taoist and Buddhist halves were separated. The golden and azure lights reflected the 9 heavens and the moon. Bodhi tested the formation. The indestructible golden body shone with Buddhist light, blocking the two grand formations of reincarnation. Something's wrong. At that moment, Qing Ning said in a serious tone. Ning Qin waved his hand and withdrew the formation. He looked over and said, "What's wrong? You used the Buddhists' hard force as yang and the Taoists' soft force as yin to set up the formation. It should be a good method." However, although Dao Kuei's yin-yang formation coexisted with yin and yang, it wasn't so clearly opposed. The current formation seems to have two formations coexisting, but its power is actually weaker than a single Buddhist or Taoist formation, Qing Ning reminded according to her memories. Coexisting, not opposing. Ning Chen's eyes narrowed. He raised his hand, and a gap appeared in the divine restrictions. The two formations rotated and merged. In an instant, intense vibrations sounded out. The Taoist and Buddhist formations collided and melted. Within the formation, Bodhi was forced back several steps by the collision. His blood and qi churned. Seeing this, Ning Qin waved his hand again, separating the two formations. His previous guess was correct. Forcefully merging the two formations was impossible. However, if they didn't merge, how could they use the power of the two formations at the same time? Ning Qin couldn't figure it out. He glanced at Bodhi and said calmly, "That's all for today." Amit Ba. If the Knowing Destiny Marquis has thought it through, just send someone to inform me. Subhuti performed a Buddhist salute, then turned and left. Advisor, the battle at the front. Zhao Liusu walked up and said. Don't bother me. You handle the battle first. Ning Chen interrupted the former and walked away with an irritated expression. Qing Ning followed. When she passed by Zhao Liusu, she said softly, there are priorities. One is the Heavenly Palace Star Sovereign and the other is the Heavenly Minister. He can only deal with one of them. Unless it's absolutely necessary, think of a solution for the front lines. Okay. Zhao Liusu nodded gently and replied. Wenxian Palace. Ning Chen poured himself a cup of tea and finished it in one gulp, and then he sat down irritably and forced himself to continue thinking. He really couldn't figure out how the phoenix body could endure sitting in the study of the Marquis of Jiming's mansion for days and nights, thinking about things without sleep. You exposed yourself just now. Qing Ning walked into the hall and arrived behind him. She stretched out her hand and gently massaged his temples. Sorry, I couldn't hold myself back for a moment, Ning Chen said in a deep voice. Don't worry. Everyone gets frustrated sometimes. Zhao Liusu shouldn't be too suspicious. Just be more careful in the future, Qing Ning said softly. Ning Chen nodded. In the Hall of Respect, Zhao Liusu came back and sat on the main seat. Her eyes flashed. Just now, Marquis Jiming really didn't act like Marquis Jiming. The Marquis Jiming she knew was calm, smart, and would never show his negative emotions in front of others. After coming out of The Devil Will See, Marquis Jiming was indeed different. In the Central Continent battlefield, the pace of the Heavenly Province army became faster and faster. After Xiao Bieli took command of the army, he was no longer the minister of the Heavenly Province. Instead, he transformed into a battle-hardened general and defeated the Alliance army again and again. In front of the Heaven's Abode army, Xiao Bieli looked at the boundless central plains, and his eyes flashed. Soon, if he had a little more time, he would definitely be able to establish a place for the Heaven's Abode to live. Minister of Heaven. A guard walked over and bowed respectfully. How is it? Is Jiming Marquis still in Vanguard City? Xiao Bieli asked. He hasn't left at all, the guard replied. Xiao Bieli heard this and squinted his eyes. Jiming Marquis, what are you thinking? Do you really think these people can stop the advance of the Heavenly Province army? At the same time, in Eternal Heaven City, Chao Tianxi had been in seclusion for a few days. In order to save Celestial Venerable Ling and the others, he entered the immortal execution Forbidden Ground and fought with the Venerables of the Inner Realm. The Heavenly Province Star Venerable, who had yet to recover from his old injuries, had to go into seclusion temporarily. A strong practitioner of the immortal Tao was in seclusion, which gave the Inner Realm precious time to react. Although it was short, it was precious. In Vanguard City, Ning Chen didn't care about the battle for 3 days. The only thing he did every day was try to merge the two formations. However, every attempt ended in failure. The opposition of yin and yang was the law of heaven and earth. Dao Kuei could use formations to refine yin and yang, but that didn't mean others could do it. In the tens of thousands of years of history, there was only one Dao Kuei. This was the truth. Ning Chen was extraordinary and had done well enough. However, the difference between his attainments in formations and Dao Kuei's was still immeasurable. No one was perfect, and no one could be good at everything. Jiming was the same. In the cold night, the cold wind blew. For 3 days, Ning Chen stood quietly in the city with Qing Ning beside him. Not far away, the great white prefecture master, Bai Lingling, and Venerable Bodhi were waiting. They never left, waiting for Ning Chen's orders. However, for 3 days, Ning Chen didn't give any orders. He just kept trying and failing again and again. Beside the two of them, Yin sat in boredom. Her 2 slender legs kicked here and there, and her big eyes looked at this and that. When she was tired, she went back to sleep. When she woke up, she would run over and didn't disturb anyone. After thinking for a long time, Ning Chen looked at Yin from the corner of his eyes. He thought about it and squatted down. Looking at the bored little girl in front of him, he said softly, Yin I'll give you a riddle. If you guess it correctly, you'll get a reward. What reward? Yin eyes lit up. She ignored the question and asked about the reward first. What reward do you want? Ning Chen asked with a gentle expression. Yin thought hard for a moment, then stretched out 2 white and tender fingers and said, I want 2 wishes. After saying that, the little girl couldn't help but grin happily. If she had 2 wishes, she could make 1 wish first, then use the remaining wish to make 2 more wishes. Then use 1 more wish, and the remaining wish to make 2 more wishes. If this continued, she would have many, many more wishes. Ning Chen saw Yin's bright smile and immediately guessed what she was thinking. However, he didn't point it out. With a smile, he said, Okay, but you have to guess the riddle correctly first. Tell me, Yin said crisply. Ning Chen took a tree branch and broke it into 2, then stuck it into the ground. He then drew a line between the 2 branches and said, There are 2 people. The person on the left is always in the night, and the person on the right is always in the day. The night and day on both sides can't be changed. Is there any way to make the person in the night feel the day, and the person in the day feel the night? Yin raised her head and thought for a moment. She stretched out her finger and drew a circle beside the 2 branches and said, The person on the left has to light a very, very bright candle, and the person on the right has to enter a very, very dark room. Ning Chen was startled at first, then he suddenly stood up. A light flashed in his eyes. He was too stupid to force himself to do something that he couldn't do. He was really looking for trouble for himself. Did I get it right? Yin pouted and raised her head to ask. That's right, Yin is really smart. Much smarter than your big brother Ning. Ning Chen came back to his senses and rubbed the little girl's hair with a smile. Have you thought it through? Qing Ning asked softly. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and said, I thought too much before. It was Yin who reminded me. Since I can't make the yin and yang of the 2 large arrays merge or even rotate, then there's no need to waste time on this. Just create a pair of opposite yin and yang in the 2 large arrays. How? Qing Ning didn't understand. Let Bai Lingling and the Tai Bai Mansion Lord enter the 2 large arrays with opposite properties. Bai Lingling will use the Buddhist power to inject into the Taoist array, while the Tai Bai Mansion Lord will use the Taoist power to inject into the Buddhist array. The 2 people's power won't be enough to change the properties of the entire large array. The biggest possibility is that they will be assimilated by their respective arrays, Ning Chen replied. Qing Ning frowned and said, It sounds feasible, but it won't be easy to actually do it. Be careful. I understand. Sister Qing Ning, please continue to watch the arrays for me. Ning Chen reminded her and looked at the 3 people not far away. He said calmly, The 3 of you should have heard the method I just said. Please. The 3 nodded and entered the arrays. Yin, sit there from now on. Don't run around. Ning Chen turned around and sternly reminded her. Okay, Yin, replied obediently. After reminding her, Ning Chen condensed his qi and activated his phoenix origin to activate the 2 large arrays. In an instant, green and gold lights rose again. Tai Bai Mansion Lord, Miss Lingling, it's your turn, Ning Chen said the moment the arrays were activated. At the center of the formation, the Palace Lord of the Tai Bai Palace and Bai Lingling channeled their powers at the same time. 2 types of powers with completely different attributes poured into the formation, and in an instant, the Tao and Buddha formations shone brilliantly, illuminating the dark night like it was daytime. In between the 2 arrays, the Yellow Springs restriction opened and separated the 2 types of power with opposite properties. Ning Chen was in the Yellow Springs restriction. When he felt the power coming from both sides, a strange look flashed through his eyes. He had guessed correctly. In the two arrays, there was a hint of softness in the extreme firmness. On the other side, there was a hint of firmness in the extreme firmness. In an instant, the firmness was assimilated by the extreme firmness. Ning Chen raised his hand and many divine restrictions were activated. The entire large array started to rotate. The Taiji yin and yang appeared, and the yin and yang fishes swam. In the center of the two arrays, the divine restrictions gradually dissipated. The Taoist and Buddhist powers that were originally incompatible with each other actually reached an ingenious balance at this moment. In the sky above Jingfeng City, the green and gold Taiji diagrams appeared. There was yang in yin, and yin in yang. The cycle of reincarnation rotated, and the array of blasphemy of the gods reappeared. In the distance, in front of the Hall of Venerables, Zhao Liusu looked at the shocking scene in the sky. She couldn't hide the shock in her eyes. Even though the formation was created with the help of the Taoist and Buddhist supremes, it still couldn't change the fact that the formation was destroyed. The Marquis of Knowledge and Martial Arts. Chapter 576. In Jingfeng City, the yin-yang formation was completed. The yin-yang fish swam around knowing destiny. Green and gold light lit up the night sky. In Zhongzhou, many human supremes looked at Jingfeng City in shock. In the camps of the two armies, Xiao Bieli walked out of the commander's tent. He looked at the sky in the north and squinted his eyes. In Tianheng City, Chao Tianxi, who was still in seclusion, felt a strong pressure from afar. He opened his eyes. In an instant, the space shook. A star venerable appeared in the sky and dashed towards the north. In Jingfeng City, beside Ning Chen, Qing Ning looked at the yin-yang formation in the sky with a serious expression. The heavenly mansion star venerable might be here soon, Qing Ning reminded him. Yes. Ning Chen nodded. Such a big movement couldn't be hidden from the heavenly mansion star venerable. Chao Tianxi wouldn't give him a chance to complete the formation. This battle was unavoidable. Be careful. Qing Ning didn't say anything else. She just instructed him, and then took Yin-er's hand and left. Military advisor. A purple light flashed and Zhao Liusu appeared. Prepare for battle. Ning Chen said calmly. Zhao Liusu nodded. The purple light dissipated and she left temporarily. The yin-yang formation had just been completed. The heavenly mansion star venerable was about to arrive. A tense atmosphere spread in the city. Except for a few severely injured human supremes, everyone else appeared in the Hall of Venerables to prepare for the upcoming battle. Everyone, our mission is to stand guard outside. If the formation is broken, we'll replace military advisor and take over the battle immediately. Zhao Liusu looked at the human supremes and said seriously. Yes. The human supremes accepted the order and replied respectfully. In Wenxian Palace, Qing Ning sent Yin-er back. She walked to the front of the palace and looked into the distance. She couldn't hide the worry in her eyes. Ning Chen's current condition wasn't suitable for battle, especially when he had to hide the fact that he had a demonic body. In Zhongzhou, a white figure dashed past. It was so fast that it was shocking. It was so close yet so far. It was heading north at extreme speed. He's here. In the yin-yang formation in Jingfeng City, Ning Chen looked to the south. He waved his hand and the sunly fire appeared. White light rose and sword intent appeared again. At the same time, Chao Tianxi descended from the sky. The light was dazzling. Jiming Marquis, it really is you, said Chao Tianxi coldly. Nice to meet you, Ning Chen replied. Your formation isn't bad, so I can't let you live. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a flash of light. Chao Tianxi entered the formation and struck out with his palm. With the imminent danger, Ning Chen took half a step forward. The great formation shone brilliantly. The two formations rotated and quickly devoured the former's palm power. The power of yin-yang. Chao Tianqi's eyes flashed with a strange light. He raised his hand and the void swirled. A huge black vortex appeared and pressed down on the yin and yang formation. At the center of the formation, Ning Chen flipped his palm and guided the power of the formation to block the descending black vortex. At this moment, an earth-shattering collision sound rang out, and the chaotic airflow collapsed and spread out in all directions. Inside the Taoist and Buddhist formations, Bai Lingling and the Lord of Taibai Prefecture were also affected by the aftershocks. They both took half a step back, and the corners of their mouths were instantly dyed red. Seeing this, Chao Tianqi channeled his palm essence again, gathering the wind and clouds in all directions, increasing the power of his attack by 3 times. Ning Chen mobilized the power of the Great Formation, and the two formations rotated to block the former's palm power. This was an earth-shattering battle. The yin and yang formation was opened, and the two venerables held each other. Ning Chen used the power of yin and yang to fight the celestial treader. The shocking aftermath filled every corner of the Great Formation, frightening the gods and Buddhas. Jiming Marquis, you've used power beyond your limits. How long do you think you can hold on? Chao Tianqi looked at the three in the formation and said coldly. Star Venerable, you're so perceptive. I can't hold on for long, but how long can a Star Venerable keep attacking like this? At this moment, if Jiming Marquis was still a Star Venerable in his prime, I might have surrendered without a fight, Ning Chen said with a smile. It's useless to argue. Jiming Marquis, die. Chao Tianqi flipped his hands, and his amazing cultivation rose to the extreme. Dark clouds quickly gathered in the sky, and thunder shook the sky, covering the cold moon in the sky. Seeing that the opponent's aura was getting stronger and stronger, Ning Chen's expression became serious. He turned his feet, gathered the power of yin and yang, and rushed out quickly. In an instant, his red robe was like an illusion, and his white fan turned into a sword. As he opened and closed it, sword light shot out. Oh! You don't want to defend anymore? Chao Tianqi turned his palm to block the sword, and a vast palm power swept out, sweeping toward the former. Ning Chen waved his fan to block the attack, and retreated 3 steps. Then he stepped forward again. With a glance, the sword moved thousands of times. In a close combat, the sword light was deadly, and each sword was faster than the previous one. Can your sword defend the central plains? Chao Tianqi snorted, and turned his palm to block the sword light. Then he gathered his yuan and qi, and hit again. With a boom, the white fan blocked the attack, and it turned red. In an instant, the blood light turned into a sword, and broke through the sky. The sword at the peak was infinitely close to becoming one. With the support of the power of yin and yang, its power doubled. Chao Tianqi raised his hand, and the void rolled, and the sword light was drowned. Then he turned his slender hand, and his palm power was overwhelming. The two extremes collided again, and the dust and sand billowed. The two venerables in the formation could not bear the power of the counterattack, and they both vomited blood. Affected by the power of the two venerables, the blue and gold taiji diagrams in the sky became unstable and shook violently. Seniors, please hang in there. In the formation, Ning Chen wiped the blood from the corners of his mouth, glanced at the two, and said lightly. The Lord of Taibai Mansion and Bai Lingling nodded, and they suppressed their internal injuries with a shout, and stabilized the formation again. Chao Tianqi squinted his eyes slightly, and said, Marquis Jiming, it seems that the counterattack they suffered was much more than yours. Ha! Ning Chen chuckled, and said, Star Venerable, I'm surprised that you can provoke us with your words. I'm just telling the truth, Chao Tianqi said calmly. The cultivation of the knowing destiny realm is far less than that of the two seniors. If we bear most of the power, I'm afraid we can't even bear one move of the Star Venerable. Once the formation is broken, we will be like fish on the chopping board, at the mercy of the star venerable, Ning Chen said with a smile. Chao Tianxi sneered, and said, really? I've heard that the Marquis Jiming of the Great Xia's style has always been that a general success is built on thousands of dead bodies. In order to achieve his goal, he will never hesitate to sacrifice anyone. These two people are also the pawns that you will sacrifice, right? Well, Star Venerable, it's beneath your dignity to slander others. Don't you know that I've always taken the lead and worked hard? If what you said is true, how can the people standing in front of you be in the knowing destiny realm? Ning Chen retorted. The Marquis Jiming's tongue is as sharp as a sword, Chao Tianxi said coldly. The knowing destiny realm deserves this compliment, Ning Chen replied. Ha, you too, remember what you look like as military counselors. When you go to hell, there will be someone to take your life. As soon as he finished speaking, Chao Tianxi spread his palms in all directions, and torrents kept gathering. The shocking power shook the world, and the power beyond the limit of human beings reappeared in the world. Seniors, be careful. If you can't resist this move, we will really go to hell together. As he spoke, Ning Chen stepped forward and the white fan in his hand shone brightly. Beams of sword light shot up into the sky. They were magnificent and endless. In the dark night, where the moon was covered by dark clouds, they were so dazzling that they could be seen clearly. Sword form, heavens tear. The heavens tear appeared, and the yin and yang formation rotated. The sword light flowed with the power of yin and yang, and the power of yin and yang rose sharply. In the yin and yang formations, the lord of the Taibai mansion and Bai Lingling also focused their minds and strengthened the power of the formations with the power of the Buddha's true essence. The next moment, the blue and gold Tai Chi patterns shone brightly in the sky. Countless beams of sword light fell from the sky, cutting through the dark night with the power to destroy the world. The world shook. Clear snow in all heavens, follow the waves in sorrow. In the formation, Chao Tianxi used the power of the ultimate heaven, and cold air spread out endlessly. The shocking move went against the current. The battle at the pinnacle caused the heavens and earth to rumble. Beneath the four of them, the ground caved in, sinking several feet. Outside the formation, Zhao Liusu, Venerable Li Shan and the others looked serious. They were watching the battle attentively, ready to take over at any time. They knew clearly that they couldn't lose this battle. Otherwise, the central state would never be able to turn the situation around. In the battle, after the two forces collided, the two figures retreated more than 10 steps. Blood kept flowing out of the corners of their mouths. They were seriously injured. Clang! The Taoist sword stabbed into the ground and stopped the retreat. The lord of the Taibai mansion shouted in a deep voice. His true essence surged to suppress his injuries. On the other side, Bai Lingling spat out a mouthful of blood. Her clear sky-colored glaze technique was unstable. She couldn't enter the supreme level. The balance of yin and yang was broken. In the sky, the Tai Chi formation shook violently and showed signs of collapse. In the center of the formation, Ning Chen wiped the blood from the corners of his mouth. He looked at the sky and sighed. Star Venerable, it seems that you have won. Is it too late to surrender now? I can only be at ease if you die. Chao Tianxi suppressed the surging blood qi in his body. His figure flashed, and his palm attack was deadly. Ning Chen stepped forward, and the water light flickered. He dodged in advance. Humph, do you think you can escape? Chao Tianxi changed the direction of his palm and attacked again. In terms of speed, the knowing destiny state is not afraid of anyone. Ning Chen operated the little phoenix spirit in his body and dodged again in an instant. With a loud bang, the palm attack passed by. Rows of palaces collapsed and turned into ashes. Chao Tianxi's eyes turned cold. He had almost forgotten that this person had phoenix spirit. Compared to swordsmanship, speed was his strength. Sword move, blood flame. Seeing that the Tai Chi formation in the sky was about to collapse, Ning Chen didn't hesitate anymore. He stepped into the sky and gathered the last of his yin and yang forces to perform the ultimate sword move again. The phoenix fire fell from the sky like waves. Wherever it passed, the sword will cut out gullies. Its amazing power shook the sky and the earth. Chao Tianqi squinted his eyes and turned his palm to resist the sword will again. The vigorous palm attack met the sword will head-on. With a loud explosion, the palm attack broke through the sword will and roared out. The yin and yang were out of balance, and the yin-yang formation couldn't resist the shocking palm attack. In the Taoist formation, Bai Lingling, who was exhausted, was the first to bear the brunt. She was in danger. Seeing this, Ning Chen dashed out. He grabbed Bai Lingling and moved hundreds of feet away quickly. With a loud bang, the palm attack broke the formation and destroyed the 100,000 divine restrictions in an instant. In the most critical situation, the yin-yang formation collapsed. Zhao Liusu and the others didn't dare to delay and immediately rushed to the battlefield. Ba. At this moment, the sound of Sanskrit rang out. Golden lotuses bloomed in the sky, and rays of light gathered. A goddess of mercy walked out of thin air. She turned her delicate hands slightly and a majestic Buddhist power pressed down from all directions, immediately stabilizing the collapsed formation. West Jade Lord. Ning Chen's eyes flashed brightly. The person who was supposed to be here was finally here. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.